Hello and welcome to My Baseball History. I'm your host, Dan Wallach. My Baseball History is a long-form interview podcast where each episode, I'll talk to someone new who has some sort of association to the game of baseball. No matter who I talk to, we'll talk about how they fell in love with baseball, how their career started, and how they got to be where they are today. Today's episode is brought to you by Safe at Home Ballpark Collectibles at 91 Main Street in Cooperstown, New York. Located just one block from the Baseball Hall of Fame, Safe at Home Ballpark Collectibles offers fans apparel and memorabilia of their favorite players and teams. The shop has just about anything you could want, from collectibles to caps, from jerseys to autographed items, and much more. But they also have autograph signings open to the public every Hall of Fame induction weekend with some of the greatest ball players to ever play the game. It's not just baseball though. The store carries a wide selection of sports cards and related collectibles for hockey, basketball, and football as well. Next time you find yourself in Cooperstown, make sure you carve out some time to visit Safe at Home, just one block west of the Baseball Hall of Fame on Main Street in Cooperstown. On today's episode, I spoke with Tom Catal, who is Mickey Mantle's autograph agent and founded the Mickey Mantle Museum in Cooperstown, New York. Tom actually grew up a Dodgers fan in New York and was a great pitcher for St. Agnes Cathedral in high school. His career was so impressive that he was inducted into the Nassau County High School Athletics Hall of Fame. Tom signed to play professionally and played 3 seasons in the minor leagues for the Braves organization before a car accident ended his playing career. After starting a career in finance, Tom put on the very first Mickey Mantle autograph show on September 9th, 1978, paying the Mick $3,000 for 3 hours of his time to sign. People said Tom was crazy. People said a show like that could never work, that was way too much money to give to one person just to sign autographs. Well, we're sitting here nearly 50 years later talking about that show and knowing what the hobby has turned into, what autograph shows and signing events have become. So it looks like Tom may have been onto something. And that's not to say that he wasn't crazy, because he probably was. But as the saying goes, there's a fine line between genius and insanity. Tom Catal perfectly navigated that line. Eventually, the relationship he formed with Mickey starting at that show led to Tom representing other players at autograph shows, like Duke Snider, and he became more and more respected within the industry that he helped to elevate to levels previously thought to be unreachable. After a move to Cooperstown, Tom bought a building and founded the Mickey Mantle Museum, which he also curated. In the past couple of decades, he's sold much of his collection, but at one point, Tom had by far the world's biggest collection of Mickey Mantle memorabilia. Not just autographed baseballs and photos, though he did have hundreds of each, but also items from Mickey's playing career and personal life. He was one of the few people in Mickey's inner circle, and got to know the Mick in a way almost no one else ever did. In this episode, we cover lots of ground. Tom tells us what it was like to set up that first autograph show with Mickey, and how that kick-started a close, personal friendship which lasted until Mickey passed away. We find out what kind of a person Mickey really was behind the scenes, and whether his millions of fans were right to adore him the way that they did. We learn about Mickey's struggle with mental health throughout his life and career, and the different things he used to do to try to overcome those issues. And we hear about some of the many incredible pieces Tom has owned throughout his years of collecting, from game-used jerseys worth millions of dollars to baseballs signed specifically for him with some, how do I put this, unique inscriptions. With all of that information and much, much more coming at you, it may be helpful to follow along with the episode's liner notes on our podcast website. If you're new to the show, don't worry. You'll still be able to enjoy this episode without the extra help from the liner notes. But longtime listeners love the photos and links we put up on the website, which will give you a better understanding of the things Tom and I are discussing, and provide some context when needed. The liner notes can be found on the My Baseball History website, which is online at www.shoelesspodcast.com. If you want to follow along, head to the website where you'll see the Tom Catal episode listed first on the main page under latest episodes. Click on that and you'll be ready to follow along. There's an embedded media player right on the page, so you don't need to have multiple windows open while you listen or fumble around with multiple devices. If you want to catch up on any of our earlier episodes, you can click on the tabs at the top of the website to go back through past interviews from any of our previous seasons and see a full list of everything we have to offer so far. Everything in the liner notes goes in chronological order of how we talked about them in the interview, so you should easily be able to keep your place as you listen. After the interview, we'll do a recap of what you just heard, adding some extra insight and hopefully answering any questions that may have come up as you listened. I'll also explain how you'll have a couple of chances to answer a trivia question to win a prize, so stick around until the end of the episode for that too. But now, here's my interview with Mickey Mantle's former autograph agent and founder of the Mickey Mantle Museum, Tom Catal. just tell me a little bit about where you grew up?
Sure. I grew up in Rockville Center, and I lived there for about 35 years. My family used to go to Florida, so I used to be there alone, so it was nice. But I played Little League baseball there. I played Pony League, every kind of league, and played high school baseball there.
So you were a baseball fan growing up, but you were a Dodgers fan, right?
I always was a Dodger fan, always. Nobody was even close.
Who were your favorite players when you were a kid?
Gil Hodges was my favorite player until I saw Willie Mays play. And then Willie Mays was my favorite player.
Yeah.
Forever, actually. I don't think... I've seen other great players that I liked, but nobody had the flair that Willie had.
Yeah, that's
Willie
a great word for it.
Yeah, he really did. I mean, Tim Raines I loved, Mike Piazza. I loved Hanley Ramirez.
Yeah.
I met him out here. We were hugging and everything. He was wonderful.
Cool.
Those were my favorite players.
So being a Dodgers fan, that must have meant that you were not a fan of the Yankees.
Oh, no, I didn't like the Yankees at all. No. I tried to root for them when Tim Raines went over there. I could not do it. I tried, but sorry, Timmy.
So despite not liking his team, were you a fan of Mickey's, or did you at least admire and
No, I
respect his game?
respected him.
Yeah, okay.
I respected him, but I didn't like him. You know, as far as I was concerned, Willie was the best, then Mickey, then Duke, you know, the three of them. But I didn't know much about Mickey Mantle. Not being a Yankee fan. I'm not an American League fan.
Yeah.
I've always rooted for the National League.
Yeah, that was back when there was distinct differences between the leagues, and they had their own presidents. You know, it was an American League and a National League. And
plus, we had all the black players in the National League, and that, to me, they were the players. They were the guys to watch. That's why the National League won every All-Star game for 20, 30 years.
Right.
And they were just better.
Right. Yeah, I mean, when you can put out an outfield in an All-Star game of Henry Aaron, Willie Mays, and Roberto Clemente, how are you going to beat that team?
You're not.
Right. But you weren't just a fan of the game. You were a player, too. You were a right-handed pitcher for St. Agnes Cathedral, and in your first start as a sophomore, you threw a one-hitter against Brooklyn Prep. You finished that season with a 10-2 record and then went 9-3 in your junior year. One of those 9 wins was a perfect game against St. Pius, where you struck out 13 batters and didn't allow a single ball out of the infield. What do you remember about that day?
Not much about that day. The only thing I do remember is that the coach of Pius, he was my coach in 8th grade, and I threw a perfect game for him in 8th grade. And then I threw this one, you know. So it was like retribution, I guess. It was funny. Yeah, he was a good man.
You finished your career with a Long Island record, 31 victories.
Yeah, 5 losses.
After a particularly special senior year, which saw you go 12-0 with a .74 ERA, you struck out 137 batters in just 70 innings pitched.
That seems low. You know,
it's 2 batters an inning.
It's not enough. I used to tell my first base and third base, if there's a foul fly, drop it. I'm looking to strike these guys out. You know, I threw about 7 or 8 no-hitters. That's the way it was. But I didn't have a .74 ERA. I don't remember giving up a run, you know. And if it was unearned.
But you were pretty decent at the plate, too. You
I led the league in hitting every year.
442 your senior year, led the team in the league. That was 1965, which was right in the middle of Sandy Koufax's peak stretch of dominance, but he was obviously a left-handed pitcher.
Yeah.
Was he someone you tried to throw like, or did you have to find a right-handed pitcher?
No, I liked him, though. Being a Dodger fan.
Of course. What's not to like?
See, now, I'm one of the few people that think he's overrated.
Really?
And I'll tell you why he's overrated. First of all, he was a nothing pitcher for a while. Then they went to Dodger Stadium, where the mound was this high.
Okay.
And you couldn't hit a home run out of there.
Yeah.
You know who his lifetime record in Dodger Stadium was?
No.
Yeah. 57-15
That'll
with
work.
a 1.3 ERA. So he was an average pitcher everywhere else. But at Dodger Stadium, he was good.
Yeah, I mean, but he still threw half his games on the road and did pretty well, especially 63 to 66. I mean, you couldn't touch him.
No, he was great. I mean, he was great. I think Kershaw was better, though.
Interesting.
I like them both a lot, but those are my two. But Bob Gibson was in there, too.
Yes.
And Juan Marichal and Tom Seaver. Those are my 5.
Well, speaking of how high the mound was, after 68, because of Bob Gibson, they lowered it.
Yeah.
You signed to play professionally and played 3 seasons in the minor leagues for the Braves organization before your career was cut short by an automobile accident on the Southern State Parkway. Where did you play when you were in the minors, and what's your favorite memory from those few years?
I played in the rookie league in '66. I was 3-1. The second year I went to Jamestown and played there. I just had a lot of fun there. But the funniest thing about it was we didn't take buses. We all took cars and we drove And guys would do crazy things on the road. I mean, I don't even want to tell you that half the things they did, things that we never would have thought of doing, like getting out of the car and throwing rocks at the car behind you that it was us. You know.
Were they your own cars?
Well, they were renting them.
Okay, yeah. So you didn't care if a windshield broke.
Wow. Oh, we had a crazy crew.
And that was kind of your first time away from home, right?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it, though. And the guys were good, you know. You get a bunch of guys together, you know how it is.
Right.
They're all nuts.
Yeah. You had a chance to play in spring training with Hank Aaron, Eddie Matthews, and Joe Torre. What was it like to share the field with players like that? What did you learn from being around them and seeing how they...
Well, I was pretty friendly with Rico Cardi. Rico I used to go to shop with once in a while. I really liked him. And he could hit. Yeah. He hit 366 one year, I think. He was a great hitter. Philippe Alou was very nice, too. But Aaron, I struck Aaron out in one little game we had.
How did you approach that at bat? Do you
3
remember?
curveballs and out. You know. But it was really funny because I did have a major league curve at 12. I mean, it was silly. And Tommy Aaron got up, and I threw him a curve, and he went, whoo! You know? He didn't like it, but it was funny. Yeah, there's so many things I've done. I played for a Negro League team. They were so hysterical, these guys.
Where was that, in New York?
Yeah, Long Island. You know, I pitched for them when I was about 14, 15. I'd go to the games, and they'd be behind the batting cage, and guys would be swinging the pitches and missing them, you know, and they'd be going, whoa. You know? I couldn't pitch. I was laughing so hard. They were really, I enjoyed that. That was a lot of fun. That was good.
That's amazing. In 2024, you were inducted into the Nassau County High School Athletics Hall of Fame, 61 years after being a 3-time first-team All-NSCHSAA selection. What was that like to be honored for your athletic achievements after so many years?
Well, you know, I used to kid them because I said, it's about time you let Babe Ruth in. You know, I used to kid them about it. But when they approached me with it, I kind of said, I'm very happy for my father because my father was a big Tommy Catal fan. It was like the end, you know, and I that would have been really good. I wish he was around to see it. Yeah. But that to me was the most important thing. That it was like certification for my dad. Yeah. That I finally did something right.
That's special.
It was.
After your baseball career ended, you went to work with E.F. Hutton as an options broker on Wall Street, and that's when you really started to collect baseball memorabilia in earnest. What were the types of items that you were going after in those first few years when you were really starting to make some money?
Mickey Mantle.
Yeah. Because you knew it was worth stuff?
Well, you know, the funny thing, I was downtown, even when I did the first show, I loved Willie.
Yeah, right.
But business-wise, they said...
So you saw that the
Mickey.
money was in Mickey.
Yeah.
Yeah. So were you collecting cards of his? Were you collecting...
cards.
At that point, in the hobby in general, was there a market for game-used hats and jerseys? Like, was that something that people cared about? Yeah, okay.
Not like now. People collect cards.
Yeah.
But I remember selling, like, I sold a 52 Mays card that had to be a 9 or a 10. It was gorgeous. And I still remember I told the guy, I said, look, I know it's only $10 in the book. I said, but I got to get 15 for this card. Card's worth 100,000, 200,000. Yeah, the cards were the thing. And yeah, 52 Mantle you could buy for $50.
Hindsight's 2020, huh? After I sold my house in South Carolina, the first thing I bought was a 51 Bowman Mays.
Did you really?
The very first thing I bought.
That's a good. That card is way underpriced.
When you compare it to the other cards of that,
it's a joke. It's a joke.
It's a joke.
You know, it's a racial thing. I mean, it's crazy.
I think so too.
It's stupidity.
Yeah.
But then they got Satchel Paige, who's he's hot.
Right.
But Willie's the greatest.
I think so too. At one point, you owned not one, not two, but 3 different T206 Hannes Wagner cards. How did that come to be, and do you still own any of them?
No.
Did you buy all 3 at one time, or
no? I bought 2. Billy Shulman, who ran the show in Idlewild Airport, now Kennedy, called me up and said to me, Tommy, you're not going to believe what's going on here. This woman has 2 Wagners, plus T206 is about 500 of them.
And roughly what year is this?
81.
Okay.
1981. And I went to the house. I almost died. There was a Matheson T206 that you could clean your teeth out. It was a 910. The only thing about the Wagners were like 2 3s, you know. But all the other cards were mint. I said, how the hell does this happen? So anyway, I bought them all for about $8,000.
Wow.
There must have been 20 Ty Cobbs in there. And the greenbacks, you know, I mean, I don't have to tell you.
Right.
It's crazy. Holy God. But I kept the 2 Wagners. But
Did you ever own 3 at the same time?
No.
Okay.
Those 2 I sold to Louis Avon, and the other one was bought by card collectors, Richard Gelman.
Okay.
I only have them, but I don't know, a month.
Oh, wow.
3
You
weeks.
flipped them that quick?
Yeah. And then I went to an auction that there was one at, and I paid $36,000 for that one. And I sold it for $46,000. I don't know.
You know, looking back, that was a mistake. But at the time,
Oh, yeah,
you
sure,
made
I
10
made
grand.
money. I
right.
know.
So, again, hindsight's 20/20. But at the time, 10 grand was still 10 grand.
The Bulls get some, the Bears get some, and the Pigs get none.
There you go.
That's the way it works.
Yeah.
And you never cry at a profit.
Right.
At least I never did.
You put on the very first Mickey Mantle autograph show on September 9th, 1978 at Hofstra University on Long Island. Admission was $4 and Mickey charged $3 per autograph as stipulated in a contract that paid him $1,000 per hour for 3 hours. There was no limit to how many autographs you could buy, so Mickey stayed an extra 45 minutes signing. Had you ever put on a show before? Right.
No.
So
I lost about $200 on that show. I
what
belly
gave you
up.
the
I went
idea?
bankrupt.
What gave you the idea that you could do that?
It just seemed like the time, you know. The timing was right.
Uh-huh.
Mickey Mantle was right. And if I could get Mantle, it would work. And me and my 2 friends, Bob Raganese and Vinny Trefino, we got lucky, I guess.
Yeah.
But see, I got the luckiest because I got friendly with Mickey,
Right.
and they didn't.
Yeah.
So I got all these things from Mantle. He used to give me stuff all the time. I mean, he used to sign 12 balls for me at the end. Commerce Comet, Oklahoma Kid. I mean, I had the, you know.
When you put on an event like that, there's a ton of work that has to go on behind the scenes to make it all happen, let alone for it to run smoothly, from finding large enough locations, to getting workers and security, to printing and distributing tickets, to marketing and promotions. What were some of the unforeseen tasks associated with putting on a show of that magnitude?
Well, I want to tell you something. A show of that magnitude is usually easy to get done because everybody wants to participate. You know.
Once you've done one before, though, for somebody who'd never done it before, you're starting from scratch.
Well, I
Once
know.
you have a template to work off of,
Yeah.
sure, but
But that first show, because it was Mantle, I think, the table sold right. Everything sold right out. And plus, we had the venue with the Hofstra was a big, and everywhere I did a Mantle show, it seemed like everything worked out itself. You know, Mickey was just perfect.
Yeah. You'd never worked with Mickey before that show, and
No.
didn't have any type of relationship with him yet. So
No.
you got in touch with the New York Yankees, and they directed you to Mickey's lawyer and agent Roy True, who made the connection for you. How hard was it to convince them to get Mickey on board for that first show?
No problem at all.
Really?
None. Roy True went and said, "Let me talk to Mickey," and he came back with the deal. I'm saying, what the heck? This could work.
So what type of relationship did you have with Roy True after that?
No, not much. Just hello, how are you?
But you guys didn't work together
No.
for future shows that you
No,
were
Mickey
using?
and I did everything together.
Great.
You didn't even forget Roy True.
Mickey once said, "I never cared about business matters. I didn't have to handle my finances because my attorney, Roy True, took care of all that. Even though I didn't like it over the years, Roy would go over business matters with me, and I'd half listen for about 20 or 30 minutes at the most." Was that Mickey just trusting Roy that much, or did he just not care about money and figured that everything would eventually
No,
work
I
itself out?
think Mickey trusted people. I really do. And, you know, he was the type of guy that he wouldn't think anybody would screw him. Well, why would you screw him?
Yeah.
I mean, we're all making money, you know. I mean, I did one show where we had a big problem because it was a show I had it was in New York, and I'm just trying to think what happened. The guy didn't come up with the money. And so Mickey just said to me, "Don't worry about it." You know, that's the way he was.
Wow.
Mickey was the kind of guy that he trusted everybody and he never thought anybody would screw him.
Yeah.
But he probably got screwed by a few people.
I think there are some well-documented instances of that, right?
Yeah.
In 1972, after his playing career ended, Mickey began working with the Reserve Life Insurance Company of Dallas, Texas, and he was given the title Director of Public Relations. He would often answer fan letters and autograph requests sent to him there. It seems like a lot of players went into the insurance business after their playing days ended, or that insurance was one of those jobs that players had in the off-season when players still had to have jobs in the off-season. Why do you think that was?
Because people would flock to these guys to write an insurance policy.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I'm getting my insurance policy through Mickey Mantle. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I used to be a stockbroker, and I had Mickey as an account. He would buy stocks. It was cool, you know.
Yeah, I didn't really consider that, but yeah, that's probably it.
Yeah, it's cool.
There's some people who say that you almost single-handedly started the sports memorabilia business from that first show with Mickey in 1978. At the time, people thought it was crazy to pay an athlete that kind of money to sit at a table and sign autographs. But you guys almost made your money back. And
Almost.
but you set that precedent then that this could be done, and with the right people the right promotions, you can make money. So what did you learn from that first show that
the first show, I said, we've lost money on this show, but there's another one, going to make another one. The thing is, you have to get certain things. Like Atlantic City show, you get the ballroom for nothing. That's important. And plus, they give you discounts on rooms. Not that it means anything, but when you get the hall for free, don't forget, you're getting I don't remember now, $200 a table. 200 tables, that's $40,000. That's yours.
Right.
You know? And then sometimes they even give you money to run the show. So we did well after that, you know. We had one or two shows. I don't think we lost money on two shows, just the first one. Just a couple of $100.
Did you see that first show at the time as one big score and then you'd be done? Or did you immediately start to think about how you could do more shows like that?
Well, at first I didn't know, but after that show I wanted to do more.
Yeah.
And plus I wanted to do it with Mickey because I got along with him.
Yeah.
But it was so funny. He called me he took my phone number and he said, Tommy, I'll call you the next time I'm in New York. I said, yeah, okay, Mick. I gave him the number, and a week or two later, I got a call. Tommy, yeah, Mickey. Mickey who? Mickey Mantle. He says, can you come to New York? I said, I can walk to New York. And so from that, everything seemed to work out perfect.
Yeah. What was it like to have admired Mickey as a player all those years and then finally have a chance to meet him for that first time? Were you awestruck, or was it just a business deal? Like, what did you feel?
I wasn't awestruck. I respected him. You know what I mean? Awestruck is not a good word for me, I don't think, because I don't really use that word. But I think I respected him, and I liked him a lot. He was really, really nice to me. Like, we'd go to I remember one time for sure, we went to he was like opening a project for homes. And he walked in the door, and they stopped me. And they said, I'm sorry, sir, you cannot go in. It's only for... Mickey turned around, and he goes, if he's not going in, I'm leaving too. All right. See, that's the way Mickey was.
Yeah.
He is wonderful.
At that first show you held in 1978, a collector named Ed Kubina brought his daughter's entire Girl Scout troop and had Mickey sign 18 different pictures, one per scout, with Mickey making them all out to Ed. At one point, Ed Kubina had over 700 autographs from Mickey. What did Mickey think of people like that who would show up at every single show where he was signing autographs and have him sign multiple items?
Oh, that was the cutest thing.
Yeah.
With Ed. Well, I bought about 200 from Ed Kubina's daughter. He was a mammal nut.
I mean,
he was
to have 700 autographs of one guy, and most of them got in person.
I had over 1,000.
Yeah, but it's different for you because you worked with them.
Yeah.
When you're just a fan who's showing up at these random events.
See, they made it $3, $4, $5 an autograph. You could buy 100. It didn't cost you that.
Right.
Now, 2 autographs cost you $10,000.
Right.
It's crazy.
Yeah, like this past year, Tom Brady had an event.
$3,500.
And people weren't happy.
I wouldn't be happy either.
Yeah.
Mookie Betts used to do the show with a private and Freddie Freeman. There was 700 and then 900 or something. I mean, people can't afford that.
Right.
And even if you can afford it, why do you want to afford it? Well, you can't make money doing that.
Right.
It's not right.
Was Mickey grateful for people like that? Like, did he see it as
Mickey
them
thought
respecting him?
Yes.
Or,
yeah. Mickey was the most humble man. You know, like I said, what's the big fuss? That's what he would think. I said, Mickey, you don't understand. You know?
Yeah. You're Mickey Mantle. That's the big fuss.
Yeah. He didn't want to understand it, which was nice.
Right. That's what made him
Mickey Mantle. Yeah. That's right.
Yankees scout Tom Greenwade signed Mickey for $1,100 after he graduated high school. Other players were making as much as $50,000 in signing bonuses at the time, so Mickey and his dad really left a lot of money on the table. That was the first of many financial deals and negotiations throughout his life that saw Mickey lose out, basically. Like signing with his first agent, Alan Savitt, and getting involved with Holly Brook. Obviously, Mickey never received any higher education, graduating high school in small-town Oklahoma before signing with the Yankees and then immediately going to play in their minor league system. But as we've talked about many times on this podcast, as it relates specifically to Shoeless Joe Jackson, There's a difference between being uneducated and being unintelligent. Do you think Mickey was a smart man?
I think Mickey was a trusting man, and he knew about life. He's just people.
Yeah.
He put his faith in people where sometimes you can't, and I don't think, I'm not saying he's smarter and not smarter, but
sometimes he just trusted the wrong people.
Yeah, he was even like Whitey, Whitey was not nice to him. So
what can you tell us about his relationship with Holly Brooke, who author Tony Castro has called...
That's before me, though.
He never brought that up? You guys never talked about it? Interesting.
No, he's going out with other girls, that I know. Like Greer. Greer I know for years. Then he had another girlfriend, Mary Ann, was it? But he went out with Greer for many, many years. They were nice together. Mickey used to make me laugh when he said some stuff that, I can't repeat it.
Fair enough.
Merlin was nice, too,
We've heard stories about Mickey being so welcoming to young players like Bobby Richardson, who we talked to on the podcast, when they first came up to the Yankees. Was that something that he consciously did because he never wanted to make a young player feel the way that Joe DiMaggio made him feel when he was a young player?
I think so. I think Mickey was just nice.
Yeah.
He knew that young players, when they first come up to the Yankees, it's not so easy. But he would take them under his wing. He'd take them out to dinner. He was that type. He was a teammate.
Yeah.
Where Joe was not.
Right.
Joe was not nice. I could tell you some stories about Joe.
I've got all day.
Oh,
tell me whatever you want to tell me about Joe DiMaggio.
Joe's not the nicest. We did a show with him that Barry Halper had him pre-signed 250 items. We came to the show. Well, he didn't sign them. We owed him $10,000 still. So I said, I got the $10,000 here. I said, here's the 250. He wouldn't sign them. I said, well, I'm not going to pay you then. He walked out. He left. So Barry called me and said, Tommy, I paid Joe the $10,000. I said, well, okay. I'm sending you 250 items when you get them signed. I'll give you the $10,000. That's what happened, But DiMaggio, he was in a Stage Deli one night, and Louis Avon and I walked by. Now, Louis was a rotund guy, about 500. And we were walking by to go eat. I said to Louis, keep walking, DiMaggio's in there. He's going to kill us if he sees us. He came running out. He's screaming and yelling. And Louis going, I can't hit him. I'm in New York. I'll go to jail for 100 years. It was so funny.
Yeah, Joe was a person who was very protective of his image.
Here's the best. He loved comic books, DiMaggio.
Really?
Yeah. He had Lefty Gomez go out and buy them and bring them back because he didn't want to tarnish that image.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear stories all the time about he would never be photographed unless he was in full suit or in full uniform.
He used to bring Lefty Gomez to his speaking engagement. And he'd say 2 words and go, and now here's Lefty Gomez. Lefty Gomez was funny as hell. I loved him. Lefty was one of my favorite players.
You mentioned the Stage Deli. When Joe was in his prime and a great player with the Yankees, that was his place. And then as his career was ending and Mickey came in, the owner of the Stage Deli kind of brought Mickey in, and Joe was like, well, who am I? I thought I was your guy.
Yeah.
Mickey finished 5th in MVP voting in both 1955 and 1958, though you could make the argument that he had the best statistics of anyone in the league in each of those seasons. But Mickey did finish 1st or 2nd in MVP voting during 6 different seasons, winning the award in 56, 57, and 62. He finished 2nd behind Roger Maris in 1960 and again in 1961. While Roger broke Babe Ruth's record in 1961, Mickey's stats were pretty clearly better overall than Maris's that year. Had he won one of those MVP awards, he would have retired with a then record 4 career MVPs. Was that something that Mickey ever talked to you about, having regret or being upset that he didn't win another during his career?
No, the only thing he regretted, he didn't hit 300.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that seemed to bother him.
And those last 4 seasons when he was playing on one leg, those 4 seasons dropped his career average. Yeah. He batted 255, 288, 245, and then 237 for a combined 254 average from 1965 through 1968. Those last 4 years dropped his career average down to 298 when it had been 309 after the 1964 season. And that's the one thing he said that
that's the one thing
he wished that he had retired with a 300
But never
average.
I heard him talk about home runs or any of that kind of thing. I don't think he ever really cared about records and things like that. He was not that type.
Interesting. Because Mickey's father said that his goal was for Mickey to be the greatest ball player who ever lived. And Mickey knew that, so that became Mickey's goal too. I know Mickey was always publicly gracious about losing the 1961 home run chase to Roger, and he always said the right person broke Babe's record that year.
He loved Roger.
But for a while that season, it was looking like a possibility that they might both break it. Did Mickey ever let on that he wished that he had also hit 61 that year? Not that he wished he would have won the home run crown over Roger, but that Mickey wanted to be able to say that he had hit more home runs in a season than Babe Ruth?
Mickey wasn't like that.
Interesting.
Wasn't like that. He was pulling for Roger every game.
Yeah.
That's the way he was.
Yeah.
He was a winner. He wanted to win. He didn't care about anything else. Like he'll always tell you, hey, if Whitey Ford is pitching and I don't play and we lose 1-0, I could have changed that game.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the way he felt every game.
Yeah.
He's a great guy to have on your team.
Yeah. Did Mickey ever talk about regrets that he had about the way that he took care of his body and his health, specifically when it related to seasons where either the team didn't win a championship because maybe he wasn't on the field when he could have been, or, we know he talked about his overall career could have been even greater, but did he feel that if he had taken better care of himself specifically in those types of years that he could have or would have achieved greater things?
I think so, yeah. Once in a while he would say, I missed too many games, I do this, I do it. As great a player as he was, he could have been a lot greater.
That's the crazy thing, when people give you like the hypothetical situations of if you could have any player play his entire career injury-free, or Mickey's my answer.
Yeah.
536 home runs, and from his rookie season, he wasn't healthy.
Yeah, and he could run.
Right.
And he had power. And he didn't have pretty good power.
Right. He had legendary power from the time he was
Which is amazing.
19.
He's not that big.
Mm-hmm.
He was big in here.
Right.
But he wasn't that big. He was a little bigger than me.
The story about the drain pipe in the outfield that ruined Mickey's knee during the 1951 World Series is well known, but Mickey had plenty of other injuries over the course of his career. He tore his thigh muscle in May of 1962 while trying to beat out a ground ball, and he was never really the same after that, either on the base paths or in the outfield. The Yankees didn't start traveling by airplane until the 1956 season. Before that, they traveled exclusively by train. Did Mickey ever mention how the travel accommodations affected his health or his body during his career?
No.
Interesting.
He never complained about. I'm telling you. He knew that.
Not necessarily that he'd complain about things, but were those ever conversations that came up that
No,
just
they didn't
telling
come up.
Stories about his time in the game?
Matter of fact, I didn't even know that they didn't use airplanes till 56. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
Because he never mentioned it.
Yeah.
And I was with him a lot. I was with him 3 days a week.
Mm-hmm.
He never wasn't a complainer at all.
So what kind of stories would he talk about? Like when you guys were spending that much time together, what were you guys talking about?
Just baseball.
Yeah. Like his own career or just
everything.
Current baseball? Like
this guy's good, this guy's not so good. He was good. He was great.
Yeah. The stories about Mickey's dad, Mutt, and his grandfather, Charlie, teaching Mickey how to switch hit from an early age are pretty well known as well. Mutt threw left-handed and his dad threw right-handed, so Mickey could practice from either side of the plate the way he'd eventually face pitching in real games. But not as many people know that Mickey's mom was knowledgeable about baseball too. Can you tell us anything about Lovell Mantle, his mom?
He loved her to death.
Yeah.
He loved her to death. And, I really didn't know his mom. And then I met his sisters and everything, but he didn't talk too much about it.
Mm-hmm.
He was always worried about the kids and, I'm not home. He always thought he was a bad father. Mm-hmm. And I always said to him, you're not a bad father, Mickey. You're like Frank Sinatra. You're not home.
Right.
What can you do?
Yeah.
You can't help it.
Yeah.
But that bothered him a little. And then when Billy passed,
right,
that was tough.
Yeah. Mickey wasn't criticized too much because he was just so great. But when he was criticized, it was because of his perceived immaturity, especially in the first half of his career. I would imagine, though, it's kind of hard to have regrets about your playing days when your team won 12 pennants in 14 years and came away with 7 World Series wins. But is that something Mickey ever talked about or admitted, that he wished he'd been a little more mature, either on or off the field?
No. Mickey thought he was mature enough.
Yeah.
He did.
7 rings is tough to argue with.
Yeah, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
And he played every game he could.
Right.
And games he probably shouldn't have played.
I was just going to say. Yeah.
He was a team player,
mm-hmm.
which was amazing.
Babe Ruth had his called shot. Willie Mays had the catch. In Mickey's own opinion, what did he think was his greatest single moment, his crowning achievement as a baseball player?
The only reason he picked this was because of the game and the line drive that Gil Hodges hit on Don Larson, and he made that play. Yeah, He might be the only one that could have caught it.
Yeah.
Because he was quick.
Yeah.
But Willie probably would have been standing there.
Well, Willie played so much more shallow than Mickey.
Willie was unreal.
Yeah.
Willie was tough. See, but Mickey would never say, well, one of my home runs. It'd be a catch that he helped somebody else.
Yeah.
That's the way he was.
He was a teammate.
He really, really was. And he loved, he did shows. And he'd have Scowen and Bauer come. If you want me, you're going to take them with you. He was great. He was really great.
Yeah, I love to hear those kinds of stories. Like you hear about Ty Cobb sending retired players checks.
Yeah, Mickey Cochran. Yeah.
So it's nice to know that.
I love Cobb. He's one of my favorites.
Yeah.
I got a lot of stuff on him.
It's been said that somewhere between 60 and 80% of the Mickey Mantle signatures on the internet are fake. Of all the Mickey autographs that are out there in the hobby, whether they're authenticated or not, how many of them do you think were actually signed by Mickey?
Well, I will tell you that they've cleaned it up a lot. 10 years ago, I would say 60 to 80% were bad.
Wow.
But now, I'd say it's probably down to 20%. They're much better because everything is, people won't buy unless it's PSA'd or...
Right. Do you have an estimate on how many autographs Mickey signed in his life?
Well, we can figure out if he did 10 shows a year, which is 10,000, maybe 12,000 a year for 20. Maybe he did about 500,000.
But that was...
And I had them all.
That was after his playing career.
Yeah.
So now you add all the signatures he signed during his career.
You very rarely do you see one. He didn't really sign much.
Interesting.
Yeah, I had a ball that he signed in 54. I got 10,000 for it.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was so rare.
Yeah, I know that Katie Jackson, Shoeless Joe's wife, used to sign all of Joe Jackson's autographs that came as fan requests. When it wasn't literally Mickey doing the signing, who would have been the people that signed his name on his behalf?
It would have to be the family, but I think he signed. I don't think he signed that much because I went to his house and he had like a lot of baseball cards. He gave them all to me.
But like, there's stories about how the Yankees publicity department handled requests with machine pen letters and facsimile signed photos, or that clubhouse personnel were employed to sign Mickey's name on team signed baseballs and things like that.
Mickey told me he didn't sign many balls. I'm going to say not too many. From 1956 to 1960, he didn't sign many balls, and there's a lot of balls. So,
yeah. So those would have been like clubhouse attendants?
Yeah, draw your own conclusion, but somebody did them.
Yeah. Was there a single person you know of who was not only a prolific forger, but somebody who did it well?
I mean, I know of people that, like a Michael Bertolini or a Ron Dross. Do you know that name?
I know the name.
Yeah.
I never met him.
Yeah,
but
he's
I know
dead
the name.
now. He's dead. Bertolini's dead. I don't know if they did, but there's so many fake autographs out there.
Yeah.
Somebody did them.
Right.
That's one of the hardest things for me to do when people come to me with a mantle and say, "Do you think it's good?" And I know it's bad, and I really, I hate to do that.
Yeah. But I think, they'd like to know,
Yeah, but, they just spent $400 or $500, and,
Yeah.
God.
Yeah, I see both sides.
Yeah, I feel bad.
Talk to me about Barry Halper. Did you know him well? I know that
Pretty
you said
well.
that you dealt with him a number of times.
Yes, Barry was probably the nicest guy in the hobby. He went right up there. Barry had everything. He had great memorabilia.
Yeah.
And then he had the auction, and a lot of the stuff they said was questionable. And it's not because he didn't know it. He thought it was real. Barry would never buy anything unless he thought it was real.
I know his story. He started going to minor league games when he was a kid and forming relationships with the players on the team, and then those players would tell the other teams, "Hey, when you come through town, make sure you talk."
I could see that.
So his collection started as just a kid getting stuff from guys who weren't worth anything.
Yeah.
But then some of those guys turned into major leaguers and Hall of Famers. And
I brought Duke Snyder to his house.
Yeah.
I remember. And he had the laundry thing with all the uniforms. He had great stuff.
So how do you think he wound up with so much fake stuff? What happened there?
Because he bought everything, and...
So do you think people were actively deceiving him? Like, were they reaching out to him knowing Barry will buy whatever I send? How did that happen?
I would think Barry would have checked it out a little bit, but I know Barry bought a lot of stuff from people that...
And money was really no object to him.
No, because he had a lot of it.
Yeah.
Did you know him?
No, I never met him, but I mean,
He was wonderful. And then they started to talk bad about him after he passed. I don't go for that.
Yeah.
He made a couple of mistakes like everybody has.
Yeah.
except me. I made a few, I'm sure. I sold a Mickey Mantle 52. Oh, this is funny. I bought it for $1,100. And I said to the guy, I'll buy it back anytime you want for $1,100. I don't care. But it went down to about $700. So he said, give me it back. So I bought it back for 11, sold it for like 8, and then the thing went crazy.
Yeah. Now that card's worth $12.6 million.
Oh, that wasn't. I had 2 6s, though, at the National about 5 years ago that I sold for $22,000.
Wow.
Oh, stupid me. Yeah.
When it was Mickey signing his own name, not all of his own signatures looked the same. Over the years, his autograph changed significantly. When most people imagine Mickey's signature in their head, they think of the exaggerated half-moon M's, but that wasn't something that Mickey started doing until the late 60s or early 70s, really.
Yeah, about 69.
Did he ever say how he came up with that?
No, but it's a beautiful signature.
It is the prettiest signature.
It's gorgeous.
And it's immediately identifiable.
Yeah.
You know, you can be sitting across the room and you see those M's and it's Mickey.
Yeah, right away. I know. He had the most beautiful signature. And I like this 51. Just the up and down. It was pretty nice, too.
Yes. There's like a wholesomeness to that signature.
Yeah. His beautiful autograph.
Yeah.
I put that in the top 1 or 2. Charlie Garringe is big.
Yes.
But the Manager Williams weren't bad.
Yeah, you know, a lot of those guys.
Yeah, but these guys today, I mean, holy. Darryl Strawberry, Gooden, you can't even tell us that.
Or even Mark McGuire.
Yeah.
You know.
I'll tell you an autograph that's horrible, and I would never believe it, is Greg Maddox.
Yeah.
His autograph is horrible.
I wonder if it's one of those things where he doesn't like signing,
Maybe.
so he thinks if I sign poorly, people are just going to
People
stop
won't
asking
bother.
me. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
You know, when I sign my own name, whether it's on a contract or a check, there's specific details that are nearly identical every time. But if you ask me to sign my name 100 times, you'd get 100 different signatures. I mean, they'd all be similar, but probably none of them would be exactly the same.
You're right.
And that's when I'm signing my name on a flat item on a flat surface. Did you ever talk with Mickey about how hard it was to perfectly repeat his signature thousands of times, especially like on a round baseball?
See, now I sign baseballs too because when I play in the mine, it's awful difficult.
It's tough.
And how the heck you going to do the exact same? But Mantle did it.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I never could wrap my head around that.
No.
I mean,
like you say, a flat surface, okay. But a baseball or a bat or this.
Or a jersey, like things that move as you're signing. Yeah.
He didn't change. And he always signed it in the right spot.
Right.
He knew exactly where to sign it.
Yeah.
He was different. He took pride. You know, he figured people paying $100 for my autograph, I'm going to give him something good.
Yeah. There's something to be said about that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Mickey Mantle is more than just a ball player or even a person. He's almost a concept at this point. And I'm sure he was aware of that after decades of hearing from fans of all ages that he was their hero. But was he aware of just how different that made him from nearly everyone else who'd ever played the game or even nearly everyone else who'd ever lived? Like, people may have wanted to play like Willie Mays or pitch like Sandy Koufax. Well, people wanted to be Mickey Mantle.
I have to tell you that all the people that we met, and we met a lot of people, they were so infatuated. The infatuation for Mantle. Now, I've been with Snyder and all those other guys. Hello, how are you? Mantle was like, they broke down.
Yeah.
It was like,
they turned into a little kid.
They wanted to be Mickey Mantle. Yeah.
Did Mickey want to be Mickey Mantle?
Yeah, I think he did. I mean, even though he wasn't really, not that he wasn't happy with his being, it just seemed like it didn't mean anything to him. You know, I play baseball. Yeah, but you played at a level that's, hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And that made him even greater because he really didn't realize how great he was.
In the years that you knew him and were close to him, did he ever give you any insight on what it was like to be Mickey Mantle? Like the weight that must have carried?
I know he felt pressure at times, but no, he was really so cool. He really was. I mean, he had his temper tantrums, don't get me wrong. I mean, I know that. But I have to tell you, I don't know what it was, but with me, he never was in a bad mood. I was very lucky. I mean, he never got aggravated, nothing. I was lucky, I guess. But he used to come up with some funny stuff. Oh, God.
Go on.
I'll never forget, we came out of the Hollering House one day. We were, he was staying there at the time. And somebody came, wanted to take a picture with him. So they took one picture, and then they moved in, but took 2 or 3. And he looked, they said, what is this, a layout? It was just so funny. And then I remember one night at the Harbor Club, somebody wanted his autograph, and he was eating dinner. And he got a little ruffled, but they went back to their table, and he felt bad. So he went over and said, I'm sorry, I just was... And he signed for them. He was something.
Mm-hmm. Do you think his attitude towards that kind of thing changed over the course of his life? Like when he was a player both on and off the field, maybe he didn't want the cameras on him 24/7 and he wanted to be able to blend in or go unnoticed sometimes. But then after his career was over and as an older man, was it nice for him to have people still care about him and still want to buy his autograph or buy him a drink?
Well, I'll tell you some great stories because we used to walk him in Manhattan, the two of us. Drunks would be on the street and he'd have a hat on and this and that. Hey, Mick! It didn't matter. They knew him. They just knew. It was amazing. And then I remember there was a woman in the street one night, all disheveled and everything. And Mickey says, hey, why don't you come back to my hotel, take a shower? I mean, that's the way he was. He was just a good guy. Mm-hmm. He died too young.
Yeah. I know he never treated you this way, but there are some stories about how he treated some of his fans that... he just was a little short with them sometimes.
That's because, I'm going to tell you why that is. They only meet him for the first time, mm-hmm. and it could be a problem. But, I mean, if you know him a while, he's not like that at all. Uh-huh. But I think that, at a show maybe,
Like if they were just coming in too familiar?
Yeah, you know. He gave everybody the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. But I think that could happen once in a while.
Do you think that kind of thing was really rooted in his shyness from early on in life? There's countless stories about how shy Mickey was when he came to the Yankees, from sitting on the bus for the entirety of Whitey Ford's wedding reception to not wanting to walk on the Yankees' carpeted clubhouse floor because he had his cleats on. Do you think that there's a part of him that just never got over that?
Well, he was shy, but as he got older, he wasn't as shy. As I went through the years with him, I could tell that he had matured a lot, and he accepted his stardom. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was too much.
When somebody mentions Mickey Mantle's name to you, I'm sure you hear it every day in Cooperstown.
I do, yeah.
What are the things that you first think of? Like, what are the things, memories that...
He was a great guy. He was just so nice. He was so nice to me. Mm-hmm. Anything I wanted, he would give me. And that's the way he was. He was just a great guy. Mm-hmm. And I was very lucky.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
What did Mickey think of being mentioned on Seinfeld so many different times? Or having an entire plot line of an episode surrounding honoring Mickey by naming a baby 7 because that was his number?
I love that.
Me too. I love that. It's my favorite show of all time. But that episode,
it's right up there.
Yeah. Did Mickey care about that?
Nah,
Did he watch? Like, was he aware of it?
Well, I don't know. But he never mentioned it.
That's funny.
But I love that show. Oh, God.
Mickey dealt with depression and anxiety all his life. There's a particular episode on a flight back home to Dallas after a card show in April of 1987 when paramedics had to meet Mickey's plane at Dallas's Love Field because they thought he was having a heart attack. It turned out to just be a panic attack, but Mickey continued to internalize stress, which was only exacerbated by his drinking. In 1993, Mickey admitted that at times he thought about killing himself. Did you see Mickey struggling with that kind of stuff,
No.
Or was that something that he did his best to hide from everyone?
Probably high because he was always in a pretty good mood.
Yeah.
I mean, he did some things that were really funny. I mean, I can't. Well, one night we were at dinner. It was like 6 or 8 of us. And the preacher walked in. So Mickey goes, hey, it's the preacher. He just would come out with stuff. Uh-huh. He was funny as hell.
And you could get away with it because you're Mickey Mantle.
Yeah, no. We couldn't get away with nothing.
Mm-hmm. Nah. In an April 1994 issue of Sports Illustrated, Mickey was a cover story. In an essay that was titled, I Was Killing Myself, he said, I always took pride in my dependability when I was doing public relations work, endorsements, and personal appearances. I always wanted to do my best. It was when I had no commitments and nothing to do or nowhere to be that I lapsed into those long drinking sessions. Mickey said that he used alcohol as a crutch to help him overcome his shyness and make him feel more comfortable before those personal appearances. He'd say, I forget what day it was, what month it was, what city I was in. There were dozens of personal appearances and card shows that I had agreed to be at, but when the time came to go, I'd argue that I had never agreed to the commitment in the first place. But I always made the appearance, and I'm still proud of that. How did you handle those situations when they would arise, when Mickey would be fighting with you or about an agreement that you guys had had?
Never had a disagreement.
Really?
Never.
So who...
We did about 10 or 15 shows.
Right.
No problem.
So
Never.
Who were those disagreements happening with?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Not with me. He was the easiest guest I ever had.
That's great. And who else? I know that you represented Duke Snider at points.
A little bit, yeah.
Who were some of the other players that you worked with?
Those were my two biggest. Pete Rose. But I think Harvey and Steve, it was a big show. I mean, they ran big shows with Mickey. And they may have had a problem with him. But
Gotcha. Okay.
Mickey was never. I'd have contracts for everything, too. But he was the best.
When talking about putting on autograph shows, you once said, Mickey Mantle guarantees success. I've been doing these shows for 5 years, and every year he gets more popular. In Detroit, he almost caused a riot. Same thing in Kansas City. Mickey Mantle can outdraw God by 50%. I love that quote.
That quote is all over the place.
What was it about Mickey that people were just so enamored with?
You know, what the heck? Hey, he's good looking. He's a Yankee. He played hurt. They won every year. They were in the World Series. What, are you kidding?
He was on TV all the time.
Every year. Yeah. But he was the man. As nice as Willie wasn't on TV. But Mickey was perfect.
At the time of his retirement, you could pretty easily argue that Mickey was one of the 5 or 10 best players who ever lived. But I don't think even then that anyone would have said he was the best. And considering the lofty goal that his father set for him at the beginning of Mickey's career, did Mickey look at his career as a failure?
The only thing, he was at 298 batting average. But other than that, no, I don't think he thought it was a failure. How could you think that's a failure?
To normal people, it's obviously not. But he is not a normal person.
Yeah, he was, though. In certain ways, he was.
I hear what you're saying.
And his father might have tried to indoctrinate him into these high, lofty things. But I don't know if Mickey, he was a country boy. I don't think he would think, I don't know.
Yeah.
Mickey. Too much.
For decades, it was Willie, Mickey, and the Duke. All 3 of them nearly always mentioned together.
Yeah, but Duke doesn't belong there.
So Duke Snider was the first to kind of fade into obscurity, and then it just became Mays and Mantle. Their names were inextricably linked. For years, Joe DiMaggio insisted on being referred to and introduced as the greatest living ball player, but most people seem to understand that that was a title fitting only either of Willie or Mickey at the time. But now here we are 30 years after Mickey's passed away, and it seemed like his status as one of the inner circle Hall of Famers has kind of slipped a little. It seems like most people now consider Willie Mays to be the greatest all-around ball player who ever lived, but it's not like his stats have changed in the past 30 years, and neither have Mickey's. So why do you think it is that Mickey's no longer one of the 3 or 4 names mentioned when people talk about the greatest baseball players of all time, the way that his name was mentioned like that in the 70s, 80s, 90s?
That's a good question. And Willie's is risen up.
Yeah.
But there hasn't really been another player. See, now I thought Frank Robinson was as good as Mickey.
Wow, yeah.
I mean, he was a great player. Clemente didn't hit home runs, so Hank Aaron hit home runs, but he played in the Little League park. So does Mickey.
And he didn't play defense the way Mickey did. And he didn't run the way Mickey did. So yeah, I mean, there are players who are better at individual aspects of the game.
Yeah, but not all. Yeah, Mickey gets a bad. Mickey's still one of the top players.
There are only a handful of baseball museums dedicated to one individual player. There's Babe Ruth, Jackie Robinson, Yogi Berra, Roberto Clemente, Ty Cobb, Shoeless Joe Jackson, a couple others. There used to be standalone museums for Bob Feller and the Ted Williams Hitters Hall of Fame, but after each of those players passed away, interest in their museums kind of dwindled. So trust me when I say I know how much hard work it takes to run a museum like that and how creative you have to be when your focus is so narrow. But of the more than 20,000 players to have played Major League Baseball over the years, it seems like Mickey Mantle is a no-brainer to have his own museum. You eventually started the Mickey Mantle Museum in Cooperstown. How did all of that come together, and how did you pick Cooperstown to be the location for that museum?
Well, I moved up here, and I had a place to go, and I had a lot of Mickey Mantle memorabilia. I mean, I had tons. So I said, what? Why not?
Was it initially supposed to be a museum, or were you always intending on kind of using it as a shop to sell some of the things?
Well, a little bit of a shop, but I wanted more of a museum.
Yeah.
It was a gorgeous museum.
Yeah.
You didn't see it?
Not in person. I've seen a couple pictures over the years, but I was too young to have been here while it was open.
Yeah, that was a nice museum. God, I had so much stuff then.
What were some of the kind of things that...
Uniforms, bats, everything.
What were some of the types of things that you wouldn't expect to see in a baseball museum? Like, did you have items from his homes or...
No, but I had his suits.
Yeah.
I just sold his cufflinks, 61 cufflinks.
I've seen a picture that you had his golf bag.
Yeah.
Things
I got
like
rid
that.
of that.
Yeah.
I got rid of everything, I I can't keep all this stuff. I still got a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
God knows what I got here now.
Were you, or was Mickey, ever amazed at the collectability of mundane things from Mickey's life? Like, if you or I go golfing, we keep a scorecard, and at the end of the round, that's the end of it. Maybe we hang on to it, maybe we throw it away, but nobody who isn't either you or me will ever want that scorecard for their own personal collection. But Mickey Mantle goes golfing, and he keeps the scorecard, and people bid on it at an auction, and it's worth hundreds of dollars. Did stuff like that ever mess with Mickey? Like, did he start thinking of things in his own life? Like, I don't really wear these socks anymore. I could sell them, or they could go in my museum. Like,
I'll tell you.
Yeah.
He had a bunch of stuff to go to one of these auctions, Vincent DePaul, he's going to give it away.
Yeah.
Jackets, and I think I got a jacket over here still. So he's bringing them out to the car. I said, whoa, what are you doing with this stuff? He said, I'm going to, give it, yeah. I said, why? What's it worth? 500. Here's the 500. Give me the clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got those.
Uh-huh.
They're worth money.
I know. I've seen them sell in auctions.
I mean, it's a joke.
I've bid on some of them.
What the hell do I got here? I got so much stuff. I got clothes upstairs that are his. I got Pete Rose's suit that he got indicted in.
Wow. That's interesting.
I don't know what I'm going to do with it.
Do you think a Mickey Mantle Museum is possible again? Like maybe at the site of his boyhood home, which sold in October of 2023 in Commerce, Oklahoma, or someplace else in New York?
Manhattan would be... I don't know why they don't have the Hall of Fame in Manhattan. I mean, here is... To come to the Hall of Fame here, you have to be coming to the Hall of Fame.
Right.
You don't come here just, on a whim.
Right.
It's really tough to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just don't know if the real estate is financially feasible in Manhattan. That's
it's going to cost you a lot of money to get in.
Mm-hmm.
They still have that Lou Gehrig charm bracelet. Mm-hmm. I like that. Trying to get that out of there.
Well, if you want, I'll cause a distraction.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll cause a distraction.
Okay, yeah. I can probably run faster, right?
Oh, yeah, believe me. And a lot longer.
The Civic Pride Committee of Commerce, Oklahoma had actually tried to start a Mickey Mantle Museum in the 1980s before yours, but Mickey's lawyer threatened a lawsuit. Do you know why that happened?
No. Was that Roy True or no? Now, Roy True might have been gone by then.
I'm not positive who it was.
Yeah.
If I had to guess, it was that Mickey didn't really want to associate with commerce.
I don't know.
But I don't know. I was asking because I wanted to know the answer.
I don't know.
Like I said, it was in the 1980s.
There had to be a reason.
I'm sure there was a reason.
Yeah. Well, Mickey was still alive, so maybe Mickey didn't want the notoriety. I mean, I don't know.
Or maybe they weren't going to cut him in on anything and he just didn't want them to profit off his name.
Could be.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I used to run a record label, and I've been lucky enough to work with and become friends with some of my favorite musicians and songwriters of all time. When you have a working relationship with someone like that, and especially a friendship with someone famous like that, sometimes you forget how other people see them and idolize them. Did that happen with you and Mickey? That, like, eventually he just became your buddy Mick?
Yeah, he did. But, I mean, I still was aware of who he was. Uh-huh. And people wouldn't let you forget who he was because they were, I got so much stuff. It's a joke.
Well, like you said, you've been doing this for 55 years,
that's right,
you know? Were there ever times where you would be reminded that, like, I'm friends with American icon Mickey Mantle?
I thought to myself that I was lucky,
What were some of the things that would cause you to remember that or think that?
Even my friends. How come you're friendly with them? I don't know. I couldn't answer them. I said, I don't know why. It just worked out. But he was so good to me. Oh, God.
What did you call him?
Mickey.
Mickey?
Mickey, yeah.
To you, what made him Mickey?
He was special by the way he treated everyone. See, he was really, really good. He never gave up, no problems, no nothing. He was beyond it all. That's what killed me.
If somebody ever did him wrong, would he cut them out, not in the moment,
yeah,
but would he take a mental note and be like, okay, we're not dealing with them ever again?
No, because people did that to him.
Right. So how did he handle that?
And he allowed it. He allowed it. Whitey Ford did that to him.
Really?
But he allowed it, He said,
But that's kind of different. It's like, if you've got a buddy from high school who turns into a dirtbag.
Yeah, but Whitey doesn't turn into a dirtbag.
But you know what I'm saying? Like, you've got too much history with that person. If some random person does you wrong, you don't give them 50 years of the benefit of the doubt. You can write that person off. But when somebody who you've got this long history with.
But I think you probably remember the autographed photo of the dugout shot. It's got Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Joe DiMaggio.
Yeah.
They made 500 of them. Whitey had Joe DiMaggio sign it. He sends it to Mickey. He says, Mickey, you sign it. Send them back to me. I'll sign it, and I'll send you back $250. Half.
Mm-hmm.
I said, Mickey, he ain't sending you back. I'm telling you right now. Why didn't he sign it before he sent it to you?
Right.
And that's exactly what he did. He kept all 500. That bothered me.
Yeah, that's a shame. But did Mickey just look at that like,
Eh.
Whitey must need the money more than I do, so we'll let him have it?
He let me get away with it. I mean, maybe that was it. But I think Mickey felt a little bad that he took advantage of it because the picture's worth a lot of money.
And 500 of them are worth 500 times more than that. Right.
Yeah.
Did Mickey ever struggle financially in the times that you knew him? Or
I think at the beginning, before I came into the, not that I, but since I started the shows, that made it big.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, he was worth it every penny.
Yeah.
Oh,
At some point during the course of your guys' working relationship, Mickey was banned from baseball because of his association with the casino. What do you remember about that?
Before me or just after?
I thought that happened in the 1980s.
Trying to think.
So
I had him at the Claridge Hotel, so
yeah,
that's where he was working. Yeah, he was a little bit mad with that. He didn't think it was fair, and it wasn't fair. Him and Willie, the two guys.
Right. You said that you guys used to go out together 3 times a week to eat. Where were some of the restaurants that you'd go?
He always wanted to go to the same places.
Yeah, where were they?
La Indra. I hated this place. This French joint.
Okay.
The Russian tea room we used to go to.
Wait, where was that first one? Was it in New York?
Oh, yeah, in New York.
Yeah.
In New York. Hunam on 45th Street. The Homestead we went to a few times.
Okay.
The old Homestead.
And what about his own restaurant?
We used to go there, too.
Yeah.
He was so good to me. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Was that like traveling with Frank Sinatra? That he was just constantly being mobbed by fans and having people come up to him and ask him for pictures and autographs? Like, were you ever able to just sit down and have a meal, or was it always something?
Always something. Always, But he handled it right because only 1 or 2, not a lot of people came by. And plus, in certain restaurants, they were a little bit more upper, so these people didn't want to be bothered. They probably didn't know who the hell he was.
Yeah. If you go to McDonald's, you're in trouble.
Yeah. You'd have to work there. Oh, God. But he was that kind of guy. He was just something else.
Mickey made somewhere in the neighborhood of $1.2 million during his career as a player. Have you ever calculated how much money he made appearing at card shows and signing autographs?
Oh, more. Much more.
Yeah.
Much more. 1.2 million. He made that in 2 hours.
I mean, with Soto's contract, every 2 games, I think it's $1 million for him. I mean, it's
a joke.
It's crazy.
And I don't know how good he really is. I mean, he's good, but he's 288. That's not great.
Right. I think they're banking on the fact that he's 26.
Yeah.
And if they get 2 or 3 World Series appearances and maybe a ring,
the contract's
going to... They really only need to win 1, though, to make it worth it, right?
Yeah, I guess. But, I mean, who are they going to have bat fourth? Are they going to keep Alonso? I'm going to tell you something. He'll walk 200 times, Soto, if this guy doesn't hit behind him.
He already walks 120 times.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mickey's 1952 Topps card has been in high demand since late 1970s and early 1980s. You know, obviously he wasn't still alive when the prices skyrocketed into the millions, but even as far back as the 1980 price guide, the only card in the book which had a higher list price than Mickey's 1952 Topps was the T206 Hannes Wagner. What did Mickey think of that when he was still alive?
It didn't affect him at all.
Really?
He didn't care. No.
Did he have copies of his own cards?
Well, I took him. I'm going to tell you, though, he didn't have a 52, I can tell you that.
Well, those all got dumped in the river, right?
He threw all of them into the ocean, he said.
If Mickey were still alive today, what do you think he would think about the prices that his memorabilia fetches these days? You know, his 1952 Topps card sold for $12.6 million, more than 10 times what he made as a player during his career. Would that have made him happy that he's still in such high demand, or would that have infuriated him that his years of hard work and putting his body through hell was only worth a fraction of what one piece of cardboard with his picture on it sells for?
It wouldn't bother him. No, he wouldn't care. He'd just laugh it off.
Uh-huh.
It's just like he would say, well, look at these guys are making X amount of money today.
Uh-huh.
And he'd say, I'm not even involved in that money.
Uh-huh.
He said, it's not right, but wait. I played at the wrong time.
Do you think he would have taken pride in the fact that his card is sold for more than anybody else, or did he not even care about that?
He wasn't a pride guy.
Yeah.
You know, he'd be probably happy inside, but I don't think he'd let you know. And it's still not more than the Wagner card. The Wagner card in the 10 would be about 2 zillion.
The one that the Hall of Fame has, if they graded that and put that on the market, that would be the most expensive card in the world, I think.
Yeah, but I think it's trimmed, isn't it?
I don't think the one that's inside is.
I don't know.
I think theirs is legit.
It's a nice one?
I mean, it's definitely nice. It's possible it's trimmed, but I think it's...
Oh, I don't know. But
The jersey that was worn by Mickey when he played his final game as a New York Yankee on September 28th, 1968, sold for $2.19 million in February of 2022. It was also the jersey Mickey was wearing when Denny McLain served up what has become known as the gift, essentially a batting practice fastball during the game September 19th, 1968, which Mickey hit over the fence for his 535th career home run, which allowed him to pass Jimmy Fox and move into sole possession of third place on the all-time list behind only Babe Ruth, who had 714, and Willie Mays, who at that point had 587. But there's something interesting about that jersey that Mickey was wearing on that day, which sold for so much money. Mickey signed it with a blue Sharpie and added an inscription which read, "To Tom, a great friend always, the Mick." When did Mickey give you that jersey?
God, 82?
So how did it work during his playing career? Were the teams taking the jerseys back at the end of the season? Or
Some of them did, because I know that we used to go to Yankee Stadium, and the clubhouse guy used to let us in, and they had jerseys in there.
But then at a certain point, the players were allowed to keep them.
Yeah. I don't know. Mantle might be kept his. You know, but
what were they going to do? Kick him off the team?
I know.
So was Mickey conscious of that? Like, did he keep things as mementos?
Certain things, like he kept all the Sports Illustrateds. They were all over his house. You know, all hung up. He had some trophies. The Hickok belt he had. A few things at the house.
Interesting.
But he didn't have a trophy room with everything.
Yeah.
He wasn't like that, you know. He probably would have been happy if nobody knew who he was.
Did he get awestruck around people?
I don't think so.
When you guys would be at card shows or autograph signings?
Who's gonna awestruck him when?
Not in baseball, but like if he met Muhammad Ali or somebody like that, people who were at the peak of their professions in other areas.
No.
Because you'd imagine that he'd be rubbing elbows with those types of people, right?
I'll never forget, we went to see the Judge one night, you know, in Atlantic City, and they introduced him, and I stood up, and I did the same thing at Old Timers. I take the Old Timers, I get out of the car. I had more fun than him.
That's what it seems like.
Oh yeah, he was a lot of laughs.
What are some of the other big ticket items that you have owned at one point but sold over the years?
Well, the golf bag. 2 jerseys. I had a 56 jersey and that last jersey. I don't remember what he paid me for it, but it's worth a lot more now.
Yeah. Everything is, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
The way the prices
Then I had a lot of his jewelry. You know, I had like rings and stuff, you know.
Like literal jewelry or like World Series rings?
I had like, no, not World Series rings, but I had like cufflinks. And, like his wife would get, I gave them away to friends. So stupid.
We're friends, right?
Yeah. There's nothing left.
That's all right.
They took it all.
Yeah. What are some of the pieces that you still have in your collection that you're excited about or that you're kind of proud to have?
About any. I mean, I like everything I have now. I'd have to go through everything. I don't even know what I have here anymore. You know? But all these cabinets are all Mickey Mantle stuff, just about.
Yeah.
I got a 51 Bowman there. That's a good card.
Yep. That's a pretty good card. Do you have a favorite story that Mickey would tell?
Well, I used to tell a story about I could tell you a real story.
That's what we're here for.
On April Fool's Day, he lived in this complex in a harbor club. I can't remember his neighbor, but they were very close, you know. So Mickey devised a plan that he was going to have a heart attack and that the ambulance was going to come and blah, blah, blah. So this is what happened. And the ambulance shows up, Mantle's laying there, you know, like he's dying, and this guy's crying, and Mickey, please, God. And Mickey went, April Fool. You don't do that. That's not right.
Did Mickey have a favorite story that he would tell?
People always ask me, what makes Billy such a good manager? And I always say, because the players know that if they're all up on top of a roof, and Billy said, jump off of this roof, they know that Billy would jump off with them. And I use this story to tell to get that fact across. And so I was telling the people up there why Billy was such a good manager. I said, I'll tell you another story. I said, he was down in Dallas last year and he did such a good gun. They get a good deal with that team down there, the turnaround gang, that they gave him a brand new rifle, and he wanted to go hunting. So I said, well, I'll take you down. I said, I know a guy down around San Antonio on a ranch outside of San Antonio in Lakey, Texas. He's a doctor, and he's a good friend of mine. I'm pretty sure he'll let us go hunting on his ranch. So, but I said, you're going to have to get up like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning because it takes 3 or 4 hours to drive down there. He said, I don't care. I want to go deer hunting, with my new rifle. So we drive all the way down there, and I said, now you wait in the car, and I'll go up and knock on the door, and I'll ask the doctor if it's all right for us to go hunting. So he stayed in the car. I go up and knock on the door. The doctor comes to the door, and he said, hey, Mick, what are you doing down here? I said, well, I got Billy Martin, the new manager of the Rangers, with me out in the car, and we was wondering if we could go deer hunting on your ranch. He said, oh, sure, anytime, come on down. He said, and I started to walk off. He said, but you got to leave the car there and walk through the barnyard. And he says, hey, by the way, would you do me a favor? I said, what's that? He said, when you go through the barnyard, so you see that old mule standing over there by the barn? I said, yeah. He said, would you shoot that mule for me? I said, oh, Christ, Doc, we don't want to shoot your mule, We come down here to hunt deer. He said, well, if you'd be doing me a big favor, because he said, I just don't have the heart. I've had him a long time. He's about 20 years old. He hasn't done any work for 10 years. I'm going to have him put away anyway. If you'd shoot him for me, you'd really be doing me a big favor. So I said, okay, we'll shoot the mule. So I'm walking back to the car. I think, I'm going to pull a joke on Billy, So I run out to the car, and I yanked the door open. I said, give me my rifle. Billy goes, what's the matter? I said, we drove 4 hours to get down here to go deer hunting. This guy said we can't go deer hunting. I'm going to shoot his mule. Billy goes, oh, my God. He said, don't do that. He's trying to grab the rifle back. So we'll get in jail, and we'll get in trouble and everything. I said, give me the rifle. I finally get the rifle away from him. I go running out to the barn, shoot the mule right in the neck, right? Mule falls over. About that time right behind me, I hear bam, bam, bam. I turn around, there's Billy with his gun. I said, Billy, what are you doing? He said, I got 3 of these cows.
He used to tell that story about the cows and the mules, but that's not true.
Really?
It's made up.
Oh,
it's
I
made
hate
up.
to learn that. I love that story so much.
It's made up. Billy shot the made up.
Dang.
Yeah.
Well, that's just shows you he's got a great zest for entertaining people.
I had a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But you can't keep it all.
Right. Yeah, even when you've got a place like this that has a ton of space,
I know.
there's still not enough space.
But I'm still full.
Right. What do you think the world has lost by not having Mickey around to tell stories and be an ambassador for the game of baseball these past 30 years?
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, Pete Rose is the one that was the ambassador. Mm-hmm. He used to sit out here, Hall of Fame weekend, on the bench, and the kids would gather around. He'd talk to them for an hour or two, and they'd ask him any questions he wanted. He was unbelievable. I have so much respect for Pete Rose. I mean, the kids loved him. Mm-hmm. Mickey was more of a joke-around type guy. Mm-hmm. People that knew him lost big. Mm-hmm. People that didn't know him, well, they lost in another way.
Mm-hmm. Because guys like Henry Aaron and Willie Mays, they weren't really in the public eye too much.
No, I know.
I feel like Mickey was more in the public eye.
He was.
He would have done interviews or been maybe not like on a post-game TV panel or anything like that, but he would have been around. He would have been publicly available and part of the game in ways that kind of his contemporaries weren't.
See, Pete would have been that way. Mm-hmm. But if they let him, they wouldn't let him, they wouldn't let him do anything. But
and even Pete was on Fox for a few years.
Yeah.
So
but then he got thrown off because of that.
Yeah.
Satchel Paige would have been a good one.
Yes.
Yeah.
Satchel Paige, just like Buck O'Neill.
Yeah. Well, Buck O'Neill was a wonderful man.
Yeah. He's high on the list of people I wish I had a chance
to meet. The Negro League players, one was nicer than the next.
Yeah.
I'm telling you. But my favorite one was Buck.
Buck O'Neill or Buck Leonard?
Leonard.
What made him so special?
Just the way he carried himself. He was so respectful to people. I mean, but in a way it kind of bothered me. It really did.
Like he was too subservient?
Yeah. I thought he was. I mean, and I'm going to tell you something. I hate to tell this story because it really bothers me. But he used to run shows once in a while. And he had Buck Leonard sweeping. And I said to him, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I said, you better stop this because it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And Buck was doing it because,
Right. Terrible.
Buck should have punched him in the face. But they weren't like that. He was just great.
Right.
Ray Dandridge, Cool Papa Bell, they were all. But Satchel I didn't meet. I love to have met him.
Yeah. What do you think Mickey's legacy is?
It's difficult to say because I knew him so well that my legacy would be much different than people that hardly everybody knows him a little bit. He's the greatest thing that ever lived, and he was. But a lot of people have the wrong impression of him, that they think he's a hard-nosed, not such a nice guy, but he wasn't that way. If you got to know him, if he liked you, he loved you.
Yeah.
But he was quite enjoyable.
If you could recommend one book on Mickey for people to truly learn about him, what book would you suggest?
One book, they're all the same to me for Mickey. I mean, he was great, he was this, he was that, he hit the ball 5,000 feet.
Yeah.
Everything is, all superlatives.
Yep.
And...
Did you ever read Jane Levy's book?
No.
The Last Boy.
The Last One, yeah, but that was about a couple of years ago.
Yeah. She wrote a book on Babe Ruth as well, and on Sandy Koufax.
Was it good?
Her research is...
Very good.
Really unbelievable.
I know what's his name wrote a book. Tony, was it?
Tony Castro.
Tony Castro, yeah.
Yeah.
His book was well written.
Yeah.
He was a nice guy. We gave him all the pictures for that book.
Right, I know. Yeah.
He was a nice guy.
Safe at Home Ballpark Collectibles is in the building at 91 Main Street in Cooperstown. Yeah. In 2002, you bought that building with Andrew Villacki. You gutted it and remodeled it. The second floor apartment is normally where Pete Rose would stay during his annual pilgrimage to Cooperstown for induction weekend each year. Pretty convenient spot considering Pete would make public appearances and sign autographs on the first floor. How did your relationship with Pete begin?
In about 1995, I used to own Mickey's place. And I had him over there in 95, and we got along. Michael Bertolini set it up.
Oh, okay.
And then Andrew got friendly with him. I got friendly. We had a good relationship with Pete.
Yeah.
He was really... And next year would have been the year.
Right. With Ichiro?
He signed in Japanese, Rose.
Yep.
You know how much? I don't want to tell you. At $100 an autograph.
Yeah, they're expecting the biggest crowds ever next year.
Yeah, I know.
And it's going to be people with money.
Oh, I know.
Because
they're not coming over here with 40 cents.
Right. Yep.
We know.
So, obviously, Pete would come every year for induction weekend.
Right.
What about throughout the rest of the year? How often was Pete?
No, he only came. We went to Vegas.
Oh, okay.
Went to Vegas twice a year. And other than that, only once a year.
Okay, that's what I thought. Did it ever surprise you? You keep saying about how kids would flock to Pete Rose. Like, why? They never saw him play.
They know the name.
Yeah.
They know that. It's like Mickey. You didn't see him play. Look
right.
at you. You're like a kid.
I've got the number 7 tattooed over my heart.
See, this one
because of Mickey Mantle. For
that's
real.
What I'm saying.
Like, there are certain players who just transcend.
Babe Ruth.
Yeah. But what was it about Pete? Was it just the way that, I mean, he's Charlie Hustle. He played the game the right way. Was that it? Or was it that he always tried to stay in the public eye and remind people, like, I'm the hit king? And
he would tell you that.
I know.
He would tell you that.
There was no bigger fan of Pete Rose than Pete Rose.
Well, I don't know. We were pretty big fans of his, too. We really liked Pete. I mean, he was great to us. But again, if you're nice to somebody, hopefully they'll be nice to you.
Yeah.
And he was always terrific. And he would sign anything you wanted.
Yeah.
And he could sign all day and all night. Oh, my God. He never stopped.
There seems to be a pretty clear consensus about him as a player. A million different people have a million different opinions about Pete Rose the person. Tell me a story that you think sums up who Pete Rose the person was, at least to you.
To me, it's outside on Hall of Fame weekend when he took 2 hours out, sat down and talked to these kids, answered all their questions. He was unbelievable. And I said to myself, unbelievable. He was unbelievable. It's a good perception to have of him because he was good.
Is there anything else that we didn't touch on that you want to talk about, or
no, I'm good.
Any other pieces of memorabilia you want to talk about at all, or stories about how you acquired certain things, or anything like that?
Most of them through thievery.
How can people reach out to you and keep up with what you're doing these days? Are you on social media at all, or do they have to show up in Cooperstown and come talk to you at Safe at Home?
Yeah, if they have something to sell, though, put my number in there.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
I don't need anything else.
Yeah.
But I always buy. I just bought that little Ted Williams fishing reel there. You see it there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, to me, as I've gotten older and been around the hobby more, those are the types of items that catch my eye.
Me too.
Anybody can buy a card. Anybody can have a signed baseball.
But that's different.
Yeah, I want the unique stuff.
I agree.
I want the stuff that people...
Do you collect?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, nothing compared to this.
Well, it's just stupid.
But I've got some cool stuff.
Yeah, I'll show you some stuff, Pete Rose stuff.
Yeah, I'd love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so
Can we
much
take
for your
this
time.
up?
This was a
I'm
lot of
probably
fun.
the easiest going guy in Cooperstown.
You weirdo.
And now it's time for a segment
You are
called
so weird.
What'd You Think, Mom? Where we talk to my mom who just listened to the interview with me and we ask her what she thinks. This is my real actual mom. Her name is Lori, but I've always just called her Mom. Can you say something to prove that you are my mom?
I can attest to your lifelong love of the number 7. Been there for the whole ride.
Yeah.
It's been fun.
Do you want to go into more detail or
From the time you were little, you always wanted to wear number 7.
you need to go further back than that?
Oh, okay. From the very beginning. You weighed 7 pounds, 7 ounces. You were born in birthing room number 7. I was there for all of that.
Me too.
And you were 21 inches long, so 3 sevens. There you go. Boom.
Yeah.
So I don't know that I had a thing for Mickey Mantle, but I guess it was preordained. He was still alive. I don't know what that meant that it was going on for you, but...
So what did you think of the Tom Catal interview?
You know the saying, believe them when they tell you who they are?
Mm-hmm.
So you started out by asking him how he felt being a New Yorker, born and raised in New York, and how he felt about Mickey Mantle. And he said he respected him because he was a Dodgers fan. And even later on, when we're listening to him, he obviously loved Mickey as a person. He loved him as a friend, as a person. But he still, he only respected him because he was a Dodgers fan.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of cute.
Yeah. Towards the beginning of the interview, I was going over Tom's incredible high school stats and talking about his multiple no-hitters and perfect games. And I mentioned that he had a record 31 wins. And under his breath, he goes, yeah, and 5 losses.
Right.
That, to me, is the mark of a true athlete. That it doesn't matter how great your achievements are, you always remember the failures. It's just so funny that, like, he became, I wouldn't say best friends with Mickey Mantle, but they were close. They hung out 3 times a week and ate together all the time. And it never mattered because he was a Dodgers fan.
Right.
Like,
I stopped counting how many times he said he was so good to me.
yeah,
And it wasn't about the commercial side of their relationship.
right.
It was, he was so good to me in so many ways. He had my back when a guy wasn't going to let me in, and he turned around and it's like, if he's not in, I'm not in.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. But still, there was that separation because he's still the little boy who was
Heartbroken every year because the Yankees were beating his favorite team.
those damn Yankees.
Yeah. Tom's recall was also really incredible. He knew Sandy Koufax's career record at Dodger Stadium just off the top of his head.
Yeah.
He said that Sandy's ERA at Dodger Stadium was 1.3. I looked it up. It was 1.37. So he didn't go to 2 decimal places, but he got it right. He said Rico Cardi hit 366 one year. In 1970, while playing for Atlanta, Rico Cardi won the batting title by batting 366. So, like, Tom was on top of things. So when he said that he threw 6 or 7 no-hitters in high school, you think he's crazy, but he got everything else right. So it makes you wonder, like, maybe he did.
Yeah, I'll trust him.
Yeah. But that's what sports does to a person's brain. That, like,
Oh, I know.
yeah, it makes you crazy, and it makes you remember the dumbest and weirdest things. He was in high school 60 years ago, and he can still remember, like, oh yeah, the guy that I pitched for in 8th grade, I pitched against him a couple years later and threw a perfect game.
Right.
There's no reason for you to remember stuff like that, but that's what sports makes your brain remember.
You do remember the name of the segment, right? I get that. He popped in a few references about his life that made me think, okay, this is my generation, and I'm a little bit younger than him. But when he said that he worked for E.F. Hutton, oh my gosh, that is such a cultural reference for someone my age. Talk about marketing that sticks and becomes part of the culture. There was a series of commercials, and the commercial would start out with a room full of people You could have hundreds of people in this room. And as soon as someone said, well, my broker is E.F. Hutton, and the whole room would turn around and look at that person. And the tagline was,
When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen.
I haven't heard E.F. Hutton referenced in so long, but you know what? It was like that was the first thing. And then the other thing was Idlewild Airport. And thinking, oh yeah, JFK in New York City, one of the most famous airports in the world, wasn't called that until after November 22nd, 1963, and it was Idlewild before that. Just strange to hear him reference that.
Yeah. We talked about, obviously, autograph shows a lot in this interview, and that's kind of how his relationship with Mickey started. And you and I looked at each other about the difference between autograph shows back then and autograph shows these days, where back then the players were signing autographs because they needed that money to live. Like I mentioned in the interview, Mickey made $1.2 million during his entire career, and that was Mickey Mantle. So imagine a role player who only played like 5 or 6 seasons. They needed those few $100 or a few $1,000 if they're lucky that they were getting from those autograph signings. But today, athletes are making hundreds of millions of dollars. So when there's autograph shows now, like, what's another few $1,000 to them? To milk that money out of their fans just so they can have a chance to meet you and shake your hand and take a picture with you, that money doesn't mean anything to those athletes. I don't like that whole thing.
Right. It makes me think less of them to hear stories where someone's charging $3,500 an item to be signed and then do an illegible signature. Seriously, makes me sick.
Yeah. And not that you shouldn't be compensated for your time, but that's part of the gig, isn't it?
Right.
You know, like that's part of the...
It's greed. At that point, it's greed. Tell me one reason why it's got to be that high. It's crazy. When he was talking about Mickey Mantle becoming a life insurance salesman after he retired, well, there were players who may not have been as famous or as well paid as Mickey. During the off season, they had to find other jobs.
Right.
And when they retired, they had to find other jobs. Is Juan Soto finding a job as a life insurance agent after?
Only if he's super passionate about life insurance. Yeah.
But seriously, I mean, they lived in regular neighborhoods. They just were regular men with families. And when they were done with their season, okay, now they're driving carpool or whatever. And it's just gotten so out of line. I am a sports fan. The dollars just are crazy to me, just absolutely crazy. And whenever I hear people signing for these great contracts, good for them. But my next thought is the fans are paying for that.
Yeah, and I don't begrudge the athletes for making the money that they do because that money is getting made. So who deserves it more than the players? Otherwise, it's going to the owners. Clearly, the owners can't be trusted to do things appropriately.
I guess, why does that much money have to be made? You know, someone's being stuck with the bill. Why can't it be more reasonable? Why does it have to...
Because that's the state of TV deals and advertising and all of the, you know, like that's...
And I'm just saying this to you. But it just... When you have a family of 4 can't go to a sporting event.
I know. We've talked about it a million times.
Right.
But
so what are we doing? It's greed. Corporate greed.
The way that Tom described Mickey throughout the interview, he said, Mickey was a winner. Mickey was a team player. He was different. He was a great guy. That's just the way he was. You really got the sense that Mickey was a great guy. That, like, he was just somebody's buddy. And he happened to be one of the greatest ball players who ever lived, but he was just a guy who wanted to hang around and play practical jokes on his friends and go out to fancy dinners, not even fancy dinners, just go out to meals and get drunk and have fun with his buddies. He just seemed like the perfect friend to have.
A down-to-earth guy. When you hear him speak, even today, you hear his voice. And to me, it is just so down-to-earth and so sincere and just comfortable. His voice is comfortable. And I guess he'd be a great salesman because if he wasn't an honest guy, he still has me. You know, that he just has a folksy way about him. And when he tells a story, he has you hook, line, and sinker. But to hear through Tom that is who he was, it wasn't just put on. You feel like, okay, he was a real guy, because how many times might you be taken by that kind of persona only to find out it's just a front and the guy's really a jerk? And so far what I've heard is the way I think of Mickey, the way I've always thought of Mickey, is who he was. And that is heartwarming to know.
Yeah, I've never gotten the impression that Mickey was a bad person. He may have been a bad husband. He may have been a bad father in certain instances or certain ways. But like we kind of talked about in the last episode with Jay Valentine, Jay played for Bob Serve when he was in college, and Bob was teammates with Mantle and Maris. And Bob, to put this delicately, wasn't a super attractive man, and he still landed Angie Dickinson.
Yeah, I'm still trying to work that out in my head.
So imagine the type of women who were coming at Mickey Mantle.
Yeah.
If he was a naive, impressionable person who was ripe to be taken advantage of, not saying he didn't play a role in the infidelity and the affairs and everything, but like, he was Mickey Mantle. If he's got beautiful women and he's drunk half the time, I can see how it's hard to say no in those instances.
I'm sorry, I don't agree that you don't have the willpower to rise above that.
I'm not condoning the infidelity, but like, I can understand how things happened.
We went sideways somewhere here. I'm not exactly sure where, but as your mother, we're going to have to talk because obviously you missed some good counsel somewhere. No, I do know about Mickey, well, about so many of their reputations, but Mickey's especially. And when Tom was talking about, did Mickey have any regrets or whatever? And the one thing he said was he wondered if he was a good father. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, yeah, you probably weren't a good father. You probably weren't a good husband. Mm-hmm. So, all the acclaim and everything else, sure, that's nice to have. Do your sons feel that that was worth what you did to their mom because she was the one at home raising them? And that story is replayed time after time after time. Sometimes it's hard for me in all realms of celebrity, not just sports, but sports especially, mm-hmm. where you think, is there anybody who can stay loyal and maintain fidelity? And it is a dilemma I mm-hmm. have between admiring someone and admiring someone.
And it's a tale as old as time. I mean, and not just sports. With the Kennedys,
right?
Like if you're a good-looking person who's well-spoken and has some sort of power, you're going to have opportunities to be with people who aren't your spouse.
Yeah, and I think less of them.
Mm-hmm.
That knocks them down, in my estimation.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
It's a hard thing to just disregard.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, I'm a history person.
Mm-hmm.
I really admire Thomas Jefferson, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But the dichotomy is he still was a slaveholder. And so as great as he was, there was still that.
Well, not only a slaveholder, but somebody mm-hmm. who slept with his slave and mm-hmm. had children with his slave.
Right. Absolutely.
So I think something that you learn about people when you read about people is that they are complicated.
Yeah.
Nobody is purely good. Few people are purely evil. That's what makes all these stories, like, that's, to me, to hear these things from people who witness it firsthand rounds out who the person was. When it comes to sports, the statistics don't tell the whole story. You can look up Michael Jordan's basketball reference page and see in 1987 he averaged 37 points a game and know that he was a great player, but that doesn't tell you who he was.
Joe DiMaggio, great numbers, kind of a jerk.
To say the least. Yeah. Just a couple of stories that Tom told in this episode about Joe DiMaggio, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
We all know crazy stories about Joe, and the reason why Mickey was the way that he was towards his younger teammates after he became mm-hmm. Mickey Mantle, I think was directly because of the way he was treated by Joe. He was already a good person and like a kind-hearted, like down-to-earth country boy, but I think he was so shy that maybe he didn't want the public eye or the spotlight in that way. But when he was treated the way he was treated by Joe, he took it upon himself to make sure that no other rookie or young player came up feeling that way and mm-hmm. getting treated that way.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Getting back to the money. Even though Mickey might not have earned that kind of money when he played, when you think about players in current times, that the numbers are just astronomical and they keep going up. My first thought was, will any of those names make it into pop culture in music or a Seinfeld reference? Mm-hmm. Or I don't see anybody being idolized or made into an icon in that way where they are part of the culture the way Mickey Mantle was mm-hmm. or even Joe DiMaggio was back in his day.
Mm-hmm. I think fame is just so different today than it was back then. Like, I don't really think anybody can become as famous as people were able to become 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 70 years ago.
There's so much competing for your attention
there are YouTube streamers who are 14 years old who have 20 million subscribers.
Right.
And those 20 million subscribers are diehard fans of that person, but nobody else on the planet has heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you had 20 million fans of a musician 50 years ago, the whole world knew about him.
Right.
Think of how many times you've talked to a friend and they're like, oh my God, I've been watching this new TV show. It's my favorite thing in the world. And you've never even heard the platform it's on, let alone the show or the actors.
Right.
I just don't think things can become famous across the culture the way that they could have been.
The way they
back
were
then.
back then, absolutely.
And when you only had 3 TV channels and only 16 baseball teams.
Right.
You know, now there's 30. And even the names that do become famous, like Shohei Ohtani, you know, like he's going to be a huge global phenomenon. He'll be more famous outside of America than he ever will be in it, I think. People know his name, but I think if you showed a picture to 1,000 random people on the street and was just like, who's this?
Yeah.
I don't think 100 of them would be able to tell you.
Probably
even
right.
Even if you showed him in uniform. Certainly not if you showed him in street clothes. Same thing with Juan Soto.
Right.
You know, if you just showed a picture of Juan Soto walking into the stadium one day to 1,000 people, I promise you less than half would even be able to make a guess.
I totally agree.
And then you think back of like, okay, if you did that same experiment in 1950 with a picture of Joe DiMaggio, most people are going to know who it is.
Right.
And they will have all heard of the name.
Right, whether they were sports people or not, because the fame went across all media, but there wasn't media back then the way there is now. So when Tom says Mickey Mantle could outdraw God by 50%, yeah. I get that because it just was all over the place. When you asked Tom, were there things that Mickey kept from his career? And one of the things he said was Sports Illustrated. And now you think, oh, isn't that quaint? Because
a magazine that doesn't exist anymore.
Right. A, and B, any magazine, because you don't have a magazine to even keep. So what do? You keep a link somewhere, you know? But that is what it was. And to make a cover, you know, all that's gone. And now it's in the vapors.
Yeah, I mean, think of the way that news cycles work, where 20 years ago, one story would be the top headline and the front page and the lead story on a broadcast for weeks.
Right.
And now something crazy happens and 6 hours later, it's on to the next thing.
Let's just say no one's saying hold the presses anymore.
Who is the most famous person that you've ever been friends with?
The first person I thought of was Wendy Ward, an LPGA player. We hosted her when she was a collegiate player for ASU. They won 3 national championships while she was at ASU. She turned pro after she graduated, and when we hosted her for the Women's Amateur Open, Annika Sorenstam played there, and a lot of the young women who were of that age, we met all of them. And then we followed Wendy around while she played all over the country and got to see different players again, but we really had a very strong relationship with her for many years, and her parents, who were amazing, especially her dad. So I guess Wendy Ward, but I would have to think about it. Was there anybody else who...
Didn't you go to the same high school as Jane Lynch? Were you...
Oh, Jane Lynch. Yeah. I knew Jane Lynch in high school. She was a year younger than me. I was in theater on crew, just like she was at first on crew, and then she broke out and became an actress in our high school plays, Thornridge High School in Dalton. We have had no connection since high school or college years. So, but yeah, when we were in high school, our theater department would put on plays and we'd compete and make it to state and go to state. And that was always a blast. And there's a strong camaraderie in that group. Loved it. Loved every minute of it. But I couldn't call her up and say, hey, Jane, it's Lori. I'm thrilled for her success. I love watching her. I just think it's great. But yeah.
All right. If you're Mickey Mantle, who is your Billy Martin? Someone who you can count on to shoot 3 cows of someone who's done you wrong.
Oh my God, that was the best story. Oh my God. Who's my ride or die that would do that? I'm blessed to have a posse.
There's not enough bullets. I've got too many friends.
We could take out a herd. Oh, yeah, I have some tremendous friends. I mean, Nancy, Elise, Eileen, Christy, Virginia, lots of people.
Yeah.
But yeah, when you have somebody like that, Yeah, that's great. And then I have relatives, not just friends, but relatives, I think, who we could rustle up some trouble as well. But those shall remain nameless. One of the things Tom mentioned over and over was how loyal Mickey was, and how once he loved you, and it would take more than he ever experienced for him to turn against you. In the Whitey Ford story, I'm sure that's just one story of many going on with that, but just speaks to who he was and how he gave grace to people that he loved, and it speaks highly of him.
But he was also given grace by people. We talked to Bobby Richardson a couple seasons ago, and Bobby was a very religious person his whole life and did not agree with who Mickey was off the field and the things that he knew Mickey was doing, and still accepted him and became friends with him. And towards the end of Mickey's life, when Mickey came to him and told him, I want to look to religion to be able to leave this earth the right way, Bobby was like, yeah, all right, let me help you, and gave his eulogy. So Mickey was a good friend to people, but also people were good to him too. And I think that's important as well.
That's a good Bobby Richardson story, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
That speaks to who he is.
100%.
And,
yeah,
and what a guy.
Yeah, that's an episode worth listening to if you're a new listener and haven't gone back.
Right, amazing man.
It was funny how, even though Tom talked about how he was such a Dodgers fan, but throughout the entire episode, he just kept saying how great Willie Mays was, who did not play for the Dodgers. He was a Giant.
Yeah.
That is how great Willie Mays was.
Even a Dodgers fan.
Yes. The Dodgers and the Giants were the rivals.
Right.
They played in the National League. Yes, the Yankees was everybody's rival because if you made it to the World Series, you were going to face the Yankees. But the real rivalry was Dodgers and Giants. So for Tom to be like, Willie was the guy, over and over and over and over.
Absolutely.
That's how great Willie Mays was. I brought this up in the interview, how in 1983, Mickey was banned from baseball because he became a greeter at a casino in Atlantic City. Willie Mays had already been banned as well. In 1979, he was banned from baseball for the same thing. So Tom kind of brought up the fact that, like, it was ridiculous that here you have the two greatest living players, and neither of them are allowed to be associated with the game because they're making a couple extra bucks for themselves after their playing career.
Right.
Having a job. Like, yeah, it's at a casino, and yeah, betting isn't allowed in baseball, but that's not what they were doing. And to kick aside your legends because of this technicality. And this was before the Pete Rose scandal. You know, this is 79 and 83. Pete Rose wasn't until 89. So it was strange to have that be something that happened in baseball history and set the precedent that people can be unbanned from baseball.
Oh, there you go.
So that is something that I'm sure will happen with Pete sooner or later. I'm sure he will make it into the Hall of Fame. It obviously wasn't going to happen while he was alive, but now that he has passed, I think the Hall of Fame and its voters will put him in eventually. He's definitely going to be on a ballot at some point now that he's not going to get that honor during his lifetime. It will be interesting to see if the voters put him in on the first ballot that he's available. I don't think that they will, just to make another statement that, like, you are not deserving of first ballot. Like, that is still a great honor to be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Right. So we're still going to withhold that honor from you as well.
I think that's the way it's going to play out. Obviously, I don't know. I'm not a voter, but if I were a betting man, I wouldn't be allowed in baseball, but I would
Nice.
I would bet that that's what's going to happen. But then that opens the door for Joe Jackson too, which is something we've been saying for years, that once Pete passes away, Joe's going to make the Hall of Fame too. And I think now that is going to happen.
Wouldn't that be something?
It will be.
So how were they unbanned?
When Peter Ueberroth became the new commissioner of baseball, he was the one to say, this is kind of ridiculous that we've got these two living legends and we can't promote them. We can't have them around the game. And he unbanned them.
I was so happy to hear that story because when I think of Peter Ueberroth, I hold him in high regard. It started when he handled the Olympics in LA, and they were such a success. It was such a proud moment for the U.S. to be the host of that Olympics. Whenever I think of him as a straight shooter, someone who, he wasn't just the face of the committee. He was an active participant and a mover and a shaker and the main force behind what those Olympics became. And how often do we hear about someone and you think he's a good guy and then you find out a backstory and it's like, oh, he really wasn't a good guy. And so that's why I was glad to hear the story where he saw a wrong and he righted it.
Mm-hmm. I also like how Tom had such a clear reverence for the Negro League players. That's something that when the microphones weren't rolling and we were just hanging out in his apartment and he was showing me all of his memorabilia, which is unbelievable. I mean, his apartment is right on Main Street in Cooperstown, so it's not even the best collection on the block.
Right.
But if it were any other block in America, it would be the best collection on the block.
Right.
It's truly incredible, the stuff he's got, from cards to autographs to jerseys to the upstairs with his Pete Rose and Mickey Mantle suits and just the things from their life that he has. But he also has Americana and like a lot of presidential things dating back to George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. Like, he is a collector at heart. Mm-hmm. He's been doing it for decades, so he has amassed an incredible collection of artwork, original paintings, and the stuff that we got to see that day was really cool. But he had an entire cabinet that was just like Negro League players and autographed pictures and the stories that he was telling about hanging out with some of those guys at autograph signings and when they would come to Cooperstown. And it was clear he wasn't just talking the talk. Like, he had decades worth of stories and interactions and fandom for the Negro League players. That was cool to hear.
How about that he pitched for a team?
Yeah.
As a 14 or 15-year-old, I'm thinking, what was I doing at 14 or 15? That was pretty amazing. I was lucky enough to go with you when you went to Cooperstown to interview Tom, and I think fondly about the week we were there. That was wonderful. It was the off-season, obviously, but what a beautiful town and what a historic place, not only from the baseball side of things, but just American history as well. Early American history and Native American history. It's dripping from the trees, and it was a very cool spot to go see the Hall of Fame when no one else was around was awesome. To take time and really check out the different exhibits, well worth the time to go in the winter if that's ever something someone thinks about doing. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to be said for visiting them in the wintertime.
Yeah. We'll talk more about Cooperstown in the last episode of the season. I won't tell you who the interview is with, but this was episode 7 for a reason. Episode 9 will be the last one of the season, and that is another Cooperstown road trip episode. So
yeah,
stick around for that. Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, thanks, Mom.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay, so that's it. In the introduction of this episode, I mentioned how there are a handful of ways for you to follow the podcast online. In addition to liking, subscribing, and giving My Baseball History a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast app, please make sure you're also following us on Facebook, Blue Sky, Twitter, and Instagram, where we are at Shoeless Podcast on each platform. By following us there, you'll get some bonus content throughout the month, and you'll be able to interact with us to let us know what you think of the show. You can also sign up for Clearing the Bases, our email newsletter, by heading to shoelesspodcast.substack.com. We publish 2 newsletters a month, which allow us to talk about lots of things we don't normally talk about on the show. I'll use that space to talk about the podcast, of course, but I'll also use it to write about baseball road trips I go on, to publish research I do, and to speak on current events in baseball, all of which are things I don't really do in episodes of My Baseball History. We'll also have giveaway contests that are exclusively for our newsletter subscribers, giving you even more chances to win some cool stuff. Look for a new issue to be published on the 2nd Friday and the 4th Friday of every month. If you have questions about the podcast or research you'd like to contribute to a future newsletter, submit something through the contact form on our website or email us at shoelesspodcast@gmail.com. Before the interview with Tom, I mentioned a trivia question you can answer to win something, and here's how you can do that. First, make sure you're following us on Twitter or Blue Sky at Shoeless Podcast. Then, find the pinned post at the top of our profile with the link to the Tom Catal episode, which asks this episode's trivia question. The answer to the trivia question was somewhere in this episode that you just finished listening to. Quote that post along with your answer, and we'll announce the winner before the next episode of the podcast goes live. You don't have to be the first person to answer, you just have to be right. But make sure you're following us on your preferred social media platform or your entry won't be counted. We'll pick one person who answered correctly, and they'll win a custom Tom Catal baseball card, autographed by Tom. We also do a separate giveaway related to every episode through our email newsletter, and the winner of that contest gets a different prize. So make sure you're signed up for that, and you'll have a chance to win something else this month too.
It was pretty early in my life that I learned the difference between having a favorite player and understanding who the best player on a team was. Growing up in Chicago and being a Bulls fan, it was harder to make that distinction because everyone's favorite player was Michael Jordan, and he was so clearly the best player on the team. But for the White Sox, it was different. On that team, my favorite player was Robin Ventura, our third baseman, and Robin was really good. He had an incredible college career at Oklahoma State, setting the all-time Division I record for longest hitting streak with a string of 58 straight games, and he was drafted 10th overall in the 1988 June Amateur Draft by the Sox. He was an all-star in the majors, winning multiple Gold Glove awards, and he hit 18 career Grand Slams, which, at the time of his retirement, was more than everybody who had ever played the game besides Eddie Murray and Lou Gehrig. Robin was a genuinely very good player, a clutch player, both offensively and defensively, who had tons of great highlights and big moments. But he wasn't the best player. The best player was Frank Thomas, whose first 7 seasons might be the greatest 7-year offensive stretch in baseball history. From 1991 to 1997, Frank became the only player in Major League history to have 7 consecutive seasons with at least a 300 batting average, 100 RBI, 100 runs scored, 100 walks, and 20 home runs. He won back-to-back MVP awards in 1993 and 1994, and won the 1997 batting title by batting .347, which was only the 3rd highest single-season batting average of his career. He's a Hall of Famer for good reason, and I loved watching him play. But Robin was my guy. As I was growing up and learning about baseball history, I decided that Mickey Mantle was my favorite player of all time. And we know the big numbers: 7 World Series rings, 3 MVPs, a Triple Crown, 536 career home runs. But Mickey was so much more than a power hitter. Early in his career, he had all 5 tools. In 1955, Mickey had a career-high 20 outfield assists. After that, runners didn't challenge him nearly as much, and Mickey never had more than 11 in a season the rest of his career. Mickey had incredible speed, but more than just being fast, he was also a smart base runner. He had a higher career stolen base percentage than Willie Mays, Jackie Robinson, Louis Aparicio, Lou Brock, and Ty Cobb, all of whom were stolen base champions at some point in their career. Mickey used that speed along with his great hand-eye coordination to become one of the best bunters in baseball history. He's 10th place all-time in number of bases empty bunt singles, with 80 in only 148 at-bats, which is good for a .541 batting average. He had 7 bunt singles in World Series play, and even had one in the 1959 All-Star Game. Mickey once famously said, "During my 18 years, I came to bat almost 10,000 times. I struck out about 1,700 times and walked maybe 1,800 times. You figure a ball player will average about 500 at-bats a season. That means I played 7 years without ever hitting the ball." Mickey's incredible eye put him on base far more often than his contemporaries. He had 11 seasons with 99 or more walks, with a career-high 146 in 1957. While his .421 career on-base percentage is good enough for 19th all-time, if Mickey would have been more focused on getting hits early in his career instead of drawing walks, there's a good chance he ends his career with the .300 batting average he so regrettably lost by sticking around those last 4 years. There's also a chance that a more aggressive approach at the plate gives him 25 to 30 more hits a year, which means that Mickey approaches 3,000 career hits by the time it's all said and done. And while Mickey is one of the true greats of the game, and a larger-than-life figure both on and off the field, I'm able to acknowledge that he wasn't the best player of all time. Heck, he wasn't even the best player of his time. Like Tom mentioned during our discussion, it's clear that Willie Mays was the better player. And like we talked about in the interview, we'll never truly know how great Mickey could have been if it hadn't been for his injuries. But as things actually played out, Willie was better in nearly every phase of the game, and had better statistics. Mickey's peak may have been slightly higher, recording 11.3 WAR in both 1956 and 1957, tied for the 14th best seasons in baseball history. Willie's 2 best seasons were also back-to-back, achieving 11.0 WAR in 1964 and 11.2 in 1965, the 19th and 18th best seasons in baseball history, respectively. But Willie's peak was longer, by far, with him having 6+ WAR in a season 18 years apart, compared to Mickey, whose span of 6+ WAR seasons was only 11 years. Mickey had 3 different seasons with 10 or more WAR. Willie had 6. And while Babe Ruth holds the record with 9 such seasons, no other player has more than Willie's 6, and only Rogers Hornsby also has as many as Mays. While Mickey's career was shortened due to his failing body, and his statistics were affected due to his injuries and his drinking, let's not forget that Willie's career was affected by missed games as well. He won the National League Rookie of the Year award in 1951, but then immediately missed 120 games in the 1952 season, and all 154 games of the 1953 season due to his military service. When he returned for his first season back in 1954, he led the major leagues with 10.4 WAR, a .345 batting average, and a .667 slugging percentage, winning the MVP and leading the Giants to a World Series win. He hit 41 home runs that year, and then 51 the following year in 1955. It would be irresponsible of me to suggest that Willie would have had that level of production in 1952 and 53 had he played full seasons. But even a conservative estimate give him another 60 home runs from those missed games, and somewhere in the neighborhood of an additional 310 hits. That takes his career home run total to 720 instead of 660, giving him the most all-time at the time of his retirement. Only Henry Aaron and Barry Bonds have since eclipsed that total, meaning Willie would now be third all-time in home runs instead of sixth. Another 310 hits gives Willie 3,603 for his career, which would have put him third all-time at the time of his retirement, behind only Ty Cobb and Stan Musial. Only Henry Aaron and Pete Rose have since eclipsed that total, meaning Willie would now be fifth all-time in hits instead of 13th. Another 160 runs bumps him up to 2,228, which puts him at third all-time instead of seventh, just 17 behind Ty Cobb for second place and 67 behind Rickey Henderson for first. Another 180 runs batted in bumps him up to 2,089, which puts him at fourth place all-time instead of 12th, and would make him one of only 6 players with more than 2,000 RBI in his career. Willie is already one of only 4 players in history with more than 6,000 total bases, but adding another 500 for the time he missed in the military moves his career total up to 6,580, and into second place all-time behind only Henry Aaron's 6,856. Now, all of these numbers are incredible, but Willie's career numbers were already amazing. However, we're only accounting for the roughly 270 games Willie missed from his military service here. It has long been said that the Giants moving to San Francisco also cost Willie a number of home runs. But taking a deeper look at the statistics, that doesn't seem quite accurate. The first 2 years the Giants called the West Coast home, the team played their home games at Siegel Stadium. Willie hit 33 total home runs there in 1958 and 1959, while he hit 30 home runs on the road. Candlestick Park opened in 1960, and Willie played his home games there through the end of the 1971 season, and then for the first 19 games of the 1972 season before he went to the Mets to end his career. During that span, Willie played 884 home games at Candlestick Park, where he hit 202 home runs. In that same period, he played 908 games away from Candlestick, where he hit 194 home runs. So Willie hit 5.93 home runs per 100 plate appearances at Candlestick, and only 5.17 home runs per 100 plate appearances on the road. Now, it is true that initially, Candlestick was not a hitter-friendly ballpark. In 1960, the Giants' first season at Candlestick, Willie hit 12 home runs at home and 17 on the road. And as a team, the Giants hit 46 home runs at home and 84 on the road. But after that first season in 1960, everything changed. Experts from Stanford did a study and found that it was nearly impossible to hit a home run at Candlestick after 3 o'clock p.m. with the fences at their original distance, because late in the afternoon, the winds off the San Francisco Bay would pick up. So, beginning in 1961, the Giants changed the start time of their home games from 1:30 p.m. to 1 o'clock p.m. But they also moved the fences in. Down the left and right field lines both stayed consistent at 330 feet each. But straightaway center was shortened from 420 feet to 410 feet, while right center and left center were each shortened from 397 feet all the way down to 365 feet. Willie himself said that playing at Candlestick forced him to adjust his swing, as he focused on hitting the ball to right center field where the wind would be less of a factor. But the fact is, he was able to do that, and it most likely helped his production. The myth that Candlestick was a pitcher's park was just that, a myth. In fact, in 8 of the 13 seasons from 1960 through 1972, the park factors at Candlestick actually favored batters, not pitchers. Whatever Willie's actual career statistics are, or what they could have been, there's no debate that he's one of the greatest players to ever put on a uniform. In my estimation, he is the greatest. But as much as I love Willie, and as much as I respect him, Mickey Mantle will always be my favorite. If you think this episode was worth $1, please click the donate button in the upper right corner of our website, shoelesspodcast.com. That is a direct link to my PayPal profile where you can make a donation in any amount. If you don't have PayPal and want to send a donation through Venmo, Zelle, Cash App, or any other platform,
shoot me an email at shoelesspodcast@gmail.com and I'll send you directions for whichever method you prefer. You can also leave a rating or review on iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast. 5-star ratings help our podcast get shown on more people's suggested podcast pages, which means that more people hear our show. It just takes a couple seconds of your time, but it really helps us a lot. And of course, liking us on social media, interacting with our posts, and sharing things with your friends is great too. No matter how you choose to support us, even if it's just by listening, we appreciate you being here. Until next time, I'm Dan Wallach, and this is My Baseball History.